Chapter 2941. Qin was puzzled. Chairman Mu, what are you thinking about? Don't you know that this is the best opportunity? You have to know that cornea donors are hard to come by. In addition, there's a strict time limit. The surgery can't be carried out immediately after finding a cornea donor. Or is it because this pair of corneas was removed from Xingza's eyes that you're upset about it? No. Mu Yaja smiled. He protected my woman. I have only respect and gratitude for him. I'm not so petty as to hold a grudge against a man who saved my woman's life. Qin bit his lip. Then why don't you let Shir undergo the transplant? The pressure and guilt caused by Gu Xing's death has already crushed her. Mu Yaja sucked in a deep breath of cold air. She's pregnant now. The child in her belly is the only hope for her to pull herself together again. But if she undergoes the surgery now, the child will definitely be lost. If she's conscious, she won't bear to do it either. If the surgery is done without her knowing, she'll definitely break down if she finds out. The point is, I don't know how sad she'll be when she finds out one day that she can regain her sight because of Gu Xing's cornea donor. Qin was speechless for a moment. Mu Yaja looked at Qin deeply. You should know that she won't be able to accept such a thing. He left the world because of her, yet he used his cornea to restore her sight. This is too heavy for her to bear. But Qin was still a little hesitant. The doctor won't recommend the surgery if it's carried out immediately. Mu Yaja continued. She's not in a good mental state now. I'm afraid that it's dangerous. Qin saw that Mu Yaja was persistent, so he gave up. Hua Jin was a little surprised when he heard this. You mean that the time limit of the cornea donor is tight? Once it's removed, the transplant must be carried out immediately. Before the surgery, we still need a day to prepare. Mu Yaja smiled faintly. There's not enough time. So Hua Jin clenched his fists and was a little sad. Then Gu Xing's cornea. Now, I heard that it was transplanted to a 7-month-old child. Child? Yes, a boy with a congenital cornea defect. Fortunately, this child and Gu Xing's are fated. The operation was very successful, and there were no signs of rejection. Mu Yaja pursed his lips. I remember that it was done in the same hospital. I went to see it on the day of the operation. The boy was very handsome. He was 6 months old and had a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. I heard that his name is Jingyang. This child had a pair of beautiful big eyes. Before entering the operating theater, when he was preparing for work, he was still smiling with his eyes narrowed. His eyes seemed to hide countless twinkling stars. When he grows up, he should be a handsome young man. Jingyang. Hua Jin muttered the name and suddenly smiled. That's good too. From the looks of it, this is a new lease of life for Gu Xingza. However, he could not help but feel a little disappointed. It was different from a person who was born blind. Yun Shir's vision was normal, but once she lost her vision and fell into desolate darkness, what kind of despair would that be? Chapter 2942. Hua Jin muttered the name and suddenly smiled. That's good too. From the looks of it, it's a new lease of life for Gu Xingza. However, he could not help but feel a little disappointed. It was different from people who were born blind. Yun Shir's vision was normal, but once she lost her vision and fell into darkness, what kind of despair would that be? Every time he saw her fumbling around while trying to take something out by herself, his heart ached when he saw that strenuous look on her face. However, every time he saw her sitting quietly on the sofa with her head lowered and caressing her lower abdomen lovingly, her entire body exuded a motherly glow that was gentle and warm. It's okay. In the future, there will always be a cornea donor. I'll pay more attention. Hua Jin said optimistically. It won't be too late to undergo the surgery after you give birth, and your condition stabilizes. Okay, when Yun Shirshir and the two little kids returned home from their walk, Hua Jin had already washed the dishes. Xiao Yichen was full of praise. Uncle Hua Jin is so amazing. Your cooking skills are not bad, and you wash the dishes very cleanly. Hua Jin could not help but laugh when he heard that. He squatted down and reached out to pinch Xiao Yichen's pink cheeks. Do you really think that my cooking skills are good? Yes. I thought that your little mouth had been spoiled by Yu Yu's cooking skills. I didn't expect that you wouldn't mind my cooking. Hua Jin heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. At the side, Yu Yu said lightly, although the food you cook isn't that exquisite, it's still edible. Hua Jin was speechless. Yun Shirshir was amused and laughed. Yu, don't be too picky. Do you think everyone is like you? You were born with an innate sense for delicious food. Yu proudly crossed his arms, feeling a little smug. Mu Yaja snorted coldly. I'm wondering if you have a genetic mutation, because I'm very particular about food. Yu said proudly. Who's like Xiao Yichen? He said that the fried rice was delicious. Ahem. Yun Shirshir awkwardly cleared her throat. That was a long time ago. Once on a whim, she cooked a plate of egg-fried rice and asked the two little fellows to eat. When Yu saw that the fried rice was overcooked, she pushed the fried rice to the side in disgust. Then she saw Xiao Yichen hugging the fried rice and eating a lot of it. When he was done, he even smiled and said, Mommy's cooking is amazing. The fried rice is so delicious. She didn't know if he was speaking the truth. He couldn't stand the fried rice, or if he thought that it was disgusting. However, to protect his mommy's reputation, he reluctantly pretended that it was delicious. Xiao Yichen argued, Mommy's fried rice is really not bad. He really couldn't tell that the fried rice was overcooked. Moreover, he was starving that day and only focused on eating the rice. He didn't think that there was anything strange about the taste. Yun Shirshir immediately raised her hands in surrender. Okay. Yu, you're the best at cooking. Mommy's cooking isn't as good as yours. Are you satisfied now? Yu was satisfied when he heard this. He felt that this way he would be able to secure his position as the head chef in the family. He looked pleased with himself. Mu Yaja and Hua Jin looked at each other and laughed helplessly. Hua Jin deliberately teased him. Yu, it's not good for you to be so full of yourself. You're just good at cooking. What's so special about that? You gave him a proud look. Chapter 2943. The next day, for some reason, Hua Jin went to the hospital to inquire about Jing Yang's condition. He saw the child through the window in the general ward on the 4th floor. It had been more than half a month since the cornea transplant. The child was recovering very quickly and had been transferred from the intensive care unit to the general ward. He would be discharged soon. The child was very beautiful. His skin was fair and clean, so tender that it looked like it could be broken by the wind. He had a pair of big, watery eyes and long eyelashes. They were as thick as the feathers of a black phoenix. When he blinked, they looked like the fluttering wings of a butterfly. This child was really beautiful. If he didn't say so, Hua Jin would have thought that he was a girl. When he smiled, 2 small dimples appeared on his cheeks. It was very seductive. He was lost in thought as he looked through the window. Suddenly, a timid voice came from the side. Hello, you are... Hua Jin turned his head and saw a 21-year-old girl standing by the side, trembling. She was dressed very plainly. She wore a white blouse and a pair of washed-out jeans. Her black hair was gently tied up with a hairband. However, even though she was dressed plainly, it still couldn't hide her clear and bright temperament. She was very beautiful. She belonged to the delicate and pretty type. She had beautiful big eyes, a high-nose bridge, and handsome facial features. Hua Jin sized her up and immediately guessed her identity. "Are you Jing Yang's mother?" The girl was so shocked that her eyes widened. She was a little surprised. How did you know?" "Because your eyes look very similar, don't you?" The girl smiled and blushed shyly. She asked carefully, "Then who are you?" She obviously didn't recognize him. It was obvious that she didn't pay much attention to the entertainment industry and didn't watch many entertainment programs and dramas. Hua Jin smiled faintly. "I'm Gu Xing's friend." Gu? The girl was so shocked that she covered her mouth like a frightened deer. Then her eyes became wet. She pursed her lips and said gratefully, "If you're Gu Xing's friend, you must be a big star too." "Yes." As Hua Jin spoke, he glanced through the window at the giraffe plushie lying on the hospital bed and smiled. "I'm here to take a look at the child." "Okay, please come in." The girl welcomed him into the ward enthusiastically. Hua Jin didn't stand on ceremony. He entered the ward and sat by the bed. After chatting for a while, Hua Jin found out her name, Jing Qi, a simple but pleasant name. Previously, Qin Zhou had wanted to transplant Gu Xing's cornea to Yun Shishir, but because she was pregnant, he could not do the surgery immediately. Hence, he found the child through the hospital. Jing Qi rushed to the hospital and understood the situation. When she heard that there was a cornea donor, she was excited but asked fearfully, "How much is the surgery fee?" "About 40 to 50,000. When she heard this, her heart hung high, and she felt very uneasy for a moment. She couldn't afford that much money and was worried about how to gather the money. She didn't know who Gu Xingze was. She didn't usually watch television. She worked in the factory for 13 hours a day. Chapter 2944. Qin Zhou learned about this situation. Coincidentally, Gu Xingze had a sum of money that was specially used for public welfare. In addition to the donation form, Gu Xingze also filled in the donation form for special funds for surgery. In other words, he had given a sum of money for the organ transplant surgery that he had donated to families who felt that it was difficult to pay for the surgery. When Qin Zhou mentioned this to Jing Qi felt especially guilty. After repeated insistence, she wrote an IOU and gave it to Qin Zhou. She also said solemnly, "No matter what, I have to return this money. Although I don't know when I'll be able to repay it, I'll try my best to repay it." The surgery was very successful. Jing Yang's vitality was especially strong. Other than his congenital eye disease, his small body was very healthy. This little guy especially loved to laugh. He had a pair of extremely beautiful eyes. When he smiled, it was warm, as if countless twinkling stars were hidden in them. The moment the gauze was removed, the 7-month-old child let out a bell-like laugh when he saw the nurse's face. The nurses especially liked this little guy. Why does this little guy like to laugh so much? He can't stop laughing. It's too funny. During the surgery, I didn't see him cry even when he was anesthetized. I heard from his mother that when he was born, he was different from other children. When other children come out, they cry loudly. What about him? When the nurse who delivered the baby patted his, but he immediately laughed. That's really rare. Hua Jin looked at the boy who was being teased by the nurse and refused to let go of the doll. He could not help but raise his eyebrows. "So cute." "Thank you," Jing Qi said politely. She nervously fiddled with her palms and then said gratefully, "I never dared to hope that the child could recover his vision, because the cost of the surgery is too high. It costs tens of thousands. Our family can't afford so much money." Hua Jin could not help but feel a little strange. He looked around and saw that there was no one else in the ward except her. He could not help but ask curiously, "Where's your husband?" Jing Qi was embarrassed for a moment and immediately said, "He's quite busy and rarely has time to take care of us." "Oh, I see." Seeing that she didn't want to talk about it, he didn't ask any more. After the child was born, we were diagnosed with an eye disease. We have been waiting for a cornea donor, but I didn't expect that I would be so lucky. The opportunity came so quickly that I didn't have time to prepare the surgery fees. However, 40 to 50,000 yuan was an astronomical figure for her. After 6 months of scrimping and saving, she only managed to save a little more than 10,000 yuan. She was already trying her best to save money. She couldn't possibly skimp on the child's expenses. She was worried that the child wouldn't develop well. Her monthly salary at the factory was more than 4,000 yuan. After deducting her expenses and the fact that she had a child, it was another large sum of expenses. She had worked so hard to save up that much. She had hoped that when she had a cornea donor, she would be able to save enough money for the surgery. But unexpectedly, 6 months later, there was news that suddenly came. After she received the call from the hospital, she didn't have time to think. She took a taxi to the hospital with the child and did a series of tests. Because if he missed it, he didn't know when the next opportunity would come. Chapter 2945. At first, I was worried that the child was too young and did not have the conditions to undergo surgery. However, after the examination, the child could undergo surgery. I was hot-headed and thought that no matter what, I had to seize this opportunity, so I didn't think too much about it and signed it. Later, I realized that I was so flustered that I didn't consider the surgery fees. If it weren't for CEO Qin's care, perhaps, are there very few cornea donors? Hua Jin suddenly asked curiously. Jingqi was stunned and nodded. Yes, the supply and demand are very tight. After all, there are many people with eye diseases now, but there are very few donors. I heard that in the past, the source of corneas came from prisoners on death row in prison, but now the law doesn't allow it. Therefore, only those who voluntarily donate are very rare. Hua Jin was stunned. If it were my child, I would be willing to exchange my cornea for it. Of course. Jingqi smiled. When the child was born, it was found that there was a problem with his eyes and he needed a cornea transplant. I asked if I could use my cornea, but the doctor said that this is not allowed by the law. It's illegal. Why? Because the cornea of a living person is not allowed to be donated. In other words, even if I was willing, the hospital has no right to perform such a surgery. Why? Hua Jin was a little agitated. Why is it illegal? Can I donate it willingly? No, it's the same in other countries. Because it's very unfair to remove the cornea from a living person's eyes and use one person's light to exchange for another person's light. Hua Jin was stunned, and his heart clenched tightly. He had originally planned to wait until Yun Shishir could undergo surgery before secretly going to the hospital to remove his cornea in exchange for her light. He had asked around in the past and found out that one cornea could restore the light of 2 people. However, now that he learned from Jingqi that living people could not donate their corneas, he could not help but feel disappointed. After leaving the ward, Hua Jin absent-mindedly stood at the entrance of the hospital. He hailed a cab and arrived at Yun Shishir. Yun Shishir had given him the key to Yun Shishir's house. When he opened the door and walked in quietly, he saw Yun Shishir holding a watering can and groping her way to the back garden. He followed her quietly and saw how slowly she walked. Beside her, the servant followed her carefully, not daring to reach out to support her. She had a strong personality and wanted to do everything by herself. She would only seek help from the servants if it was a particularly difficult matter. Mu Yaja meticulously rearranged the furnishings in the house. The angular furniture was wrapped in soft cushions. It must have been hard on him to be so attentive, worrying that she would bump into something because she couldn't see. Therefore, the corners of the table, the corners of the wall, everything that had edges and corners were covered with soft cushions. Even if he bumped into it, it wouldn't hurt. The servant saw him and was about to announce his arrival when Hua-Jin immediately shushed her, indicating for her not to disturb him. She slowly moved to the door, kicked her toes, and stepped over the threshold. Only then did she reach the back garden unimpeded. She walked to the flower bed and carefully watered the Chinese roses. Chapter 2946. Hua-Jin walked to the door and saw her carefully holding onto the flowers and watering them nonchalantly. He walked over quietly, but before he could take a few steps, he alarmed the person who was carefully watering the flowers. "Who's there?" Yun Shirshir turned her head and looked in the direction of the footsteps. Ever since her eyesight went bad, her other senses had become extremely sensitive, especially her hearing. Thus, she caught the subtle sound of the footsteps in an instant. Hua-Jin stopped in his tracks, but didn't say anything. Just as the servant was about to speak, Hua-Jin immediately put a finger to his lips and motioned for her not to make a sound. Yun Shirshir raised her eyebrows. She immediately guessed that the person who came must be playing a game of identifying people. She curled her lips and narrowed her eyes as she smiled. "Hua-Jin, stop fooling around." Hua-Jin widened his eyes in surprise. He smiled as he walked to her side and squatted down nimbly. "How did you know it was me? Your footsteps are so heavy. It can't be Yu or Xiao Chen. Other than him, you're the only one who can enter and leave this manor at will." After pausing for a moment, Yun Shirshir smiled faintly. "However, he's not like you. He doesn't know how to play such a boring game." Hua-Jin stuck out his tongue. "Sister, you're amazing. They say that pregnancy makes a woman stupid for 3 years. That's not true. You've become much smarter after getting pregnant." Yun Shirshir raised her hand symbolically and pretended to hit him. She said angrily, "I've always been smart, okay? Don't spout nonsense." As she said this, she turned her head again and continued what she was doing in a serious manner. Hua-Jin stayed by her side quietly. He didn't know why, but he really enjoyed this quiet moment. He watched in a daze as Yun Shirshir carefully watered the flowers. She was afraid that she would water them wrongly. She even carefully held the flower branch with one hand and held the watering can with the other, sprinkling the water with a sizzling sound. Hua-Jin looked at the side of her face. It was peaceful and warm. Even though her eyes were blind and unfocused, the gentleness in her eyes was something he had never seen before. Ever since that incident, due to her pregnancy and poor eyesight, she had stopped all her work and quietly stayed at home to nurse her pregnancy. Other than work, he would come here to accompany her. Staying by her side, no matter how irritable his heart was, it would instantly calm down and soothe him. As she watered the flowers, Yun Shirshir asked curiously, "You seem to be very free recently. Didn't you take on any jobs?" Hua-Jin said matter-of-factly, "Of course. I've accepted quite a few jobs." I can't tell." Yun Shirshir put down the watering can and stood up. She turned around and groped with her hands, trying to sit down. Hua-Jin immediately helped her sit down. "Since you said that you've accepted so many jobs, why do I feel that you don't seem to be busy when you keep coming here for no reason?" Hua-Jin said, unhappily, "Isn't that just to spend more time with you? Other than work, I spend the rest of my time here." This villa was huge and had many empty rooms. Mu Yaja had specially arranged a room for Hua-Jin to stay here. After all, he also had a lot of work to do. He felt more at ease letting Hua-Jin spend more time with her. At first, Hua-Jin felt a little awkward. He felt that he wasn't staying here like a third wheel. However, Yun Shishir also said that he should stay here peacefully and treat them as a family. Chapter 2947. Only then did Hua Jin feel less burdened. Usually, when he was busy with work, Hua Jin would stay in a nearby hotel. When he was free, he would stay at Yun Shishir to accompany her. Yun Shishir smiled contentedly. Should I be touched? You should be touched. In order to accompany you, I pushed away a lot of work. As Hua Jin spoke, he covered the back of her hand. Didn't I say before that if you can't see, I'll be your eyes? Yes, I remember. Yun Shishir paused. That's good too. After all, if you take on too much work, your body won't be able to take it. Hua Jin snorted aggrievedly. I still have to take care of work. If I don't earn money, who's going to support me? Yun Shishir deliberately teased him. I'll support you. No way. You're still relying on brother-in-law to support you. Moreover, you're a man, not a gigolo who lives off a woman. I don't want to rely on a woman to support me. Hua Jin said. Yun Shishir smiled and changed the topic. Suddenly, she asked, Where did you go today? Hua Jin was stunned. He didn't intend to hide it, and said slowly, I went to the hospital today. The hospital? Yun Shishir was nervous. Why did you go to the hospital? Are you feeling unwell? No, I just went to visit a child. A child? Yes. Hua Jin paused and pondered for a moment. Then he asked slowly, Did brother-in-law mention the name Jingyang to you? Jingyang? Yun Shishir looked confused. No. Did you know? When Qinzhou was tidying up Gu Xing's belongings, he found out that Senior Gu Xingze had filled in the volunteer form for organ donation when he was alive. Jingyang received Gu Xing's cornea as a donor and went through the surgery successfully. I saw this little guy today. He's very beautiful and has recovered well, especially his big eyes. They're so beautiful. The smile on Yun Shishir's face froze, and her eyes couldn't help but blank out. Hua Jin saw her expression and suddenly became nervous. What's wrong? Sister, it's been so long. You should let go of Senior Xingze, right? Ever since that incident, everyone has kept the words Gu Xingze a secret. Although I feel that there are too many regrets, we can't always be obsessed with the past, right? Yun Shishir's pupils dilated. Hua Jin held her hand tightly. His handsome brows furrowed slightly as he said with heartache, Let it go. Is that okay? Even though I know that you can't be so free and easy, it might be a little difficult. However, no matter what, you have to face it. The person who is no longer here is no longer here. The reason why I mention this child to you is because I want you to know that although Senior Xingze is no longer here, he has obtained a new life in this world in another way. Hua Jin. Yun Shishir held his hand and calmly reassured him. Don't worry, I won't make you guys worry like I used to. Upon hearing this, Hua Jin was still skeptical. Really? Chapter 2948. Sister. The more Hua Jin looked at her, the more his heart ached for her. He hugged her tightly and said with a sobbing tone, Senior Xingze's death is really not your responsibility. Don't torture yourself, and don't live in guilt. I think that if you truly love someone and give up for love, you will definitely not ask for anything in return. Gu Xingze treats you well out of his own accord, and he has no regrets. He treats you like his life, so he definitely wants you to be well. I understand. Yun Shishir hugged his shoulders gently and choked. I understand. So, I'll be well. Hua Jin wiped her tears away, but heard her say, I want to see that child. Seeing that he was silent, Yun Shishir pleaded, Just once is good. I want to see him. I can take you to see him, but you have to wait until tomorrow at least. Hua Jin explained. When I left the hospital, the child was already asleep. After all, he's only 7 months old and needs to rest well. Yun Shirshir nodded. The next day, Hua Jin turned down an interview and brought her to the hospital. When they arrived at the ward, Jing Qi was not in. Hua Jin guessed that she was probably going through the discharge procedures. Jing Qi said that the child had recovered very well, so there was no need for him to stay in the hospital any longer. Every day he stayed in the hospital would be a day's worth of expenses. The doctor had already hinted that the child could be discharged, so she planned to go through the discharge procedures as soon as possible. Pushing open the door of the ward, Hua Jin held her hand and walked in quietly. On the hospital bed, the child's eyes were wide open. He blinked and looked at the world curiously. Hua Jin had specially brought a gift for the little guy this time, a pink unicorn plush toy from Luji. Approaching the bed, Hua Jin helped Yun Shirshir sit down. He leaned over to look at the little guy and said gently, "Uncle is here to see you again. Are you surprised?" Yaya. The child stretched out his hand and pointed a tender finger at him, his eyes wide open in curiosity. Hua Jin gave him a thumbs up and then placed the unicorn beside him. Yu's unicorn was not big. It was a medium-sized unicorn. Based on Yu's height, she could hold it with one hand. However, the little guy was only 7 months old after all. When he opened his arms, he happened to be hugged tightly. It could be seen that the little guy especially liked this furry toy. He hugged it and rolled around on the bed. The 7-month-old child had already learned to crawl around on the bed and was especially good at tormenting himself. Yun Shirshir could not see. She could only hear a series of bell-like laughter coming from the bed. It was extremely pleasing to the ear. The crisp laughter was like the clear spring of a mountain stream, but also like the sound of wind chimes. When she heard this, she couldn't help but smile. Jing Qi finished the discharge procedures and walked into the ward. When she saw that it was Hua Jin, she was about to smile. However, when she saw the unfamiliar person sitting by the window, she was stunned. Although she looked unfamiliar, when she looked carefully, she felt that she was familiar, as if she had seen her somewhere before. She suddenly recalled that she seemed to have seen this woman in an advertisement when she was at the bus stop. The endorsement was for a high-end cosmetics brand. This cosmetics brand was especially expensive. When she was shopping in the mall, she had seen this counter in the cosmetics area on the first floor. On the counter, there was also a poster of this woman. Chapter 2949. Her name was Yun Shirshir. However, at this moment, she wasn't wearing elegant makeup like in the pictures. Instead, she was barefaced. When she left the house, she had only washed her face. Hua Jin saw that the sun was very strong today, so he dragged her back and applied sunscreen on her. Hence, he didn't recognize her at first glance. After the makeup, there was still an obvious difference, but it didn't detract from her beauty at all. "Sorry to disturb you again." When Hua Jin saw her, he immediately stood up and greeted her politely. "Not at all. I'm very grateful that you could come and visit Yang. Jing Qi glanced at the little guy on the bed, who was hugging a toy. She immediately guessed who had given him the toy. "Hello." Yun Shirshir also greeted her. "Are you Jing Yang's mother?" "Yes." "Can I carry the little guy?" Yun Shirshir asked with a gentle smile. Although Jing Qi found it strange, she didn't stop her. Instead, she smiled and said, "Okay, but be careful. This little guy is still a little heavy." Hua Jin carried Jingyang to Yun Shirshir. Yun Shirshir reached out and hugged the little guy. Seeing that she couldn't see, Jing Qi was slightly surprised. She opened her mouth, but didn't ask anything. The little guy was in Yun Shirshir's arms, but surprisingly, he didn't feel shy. He only opened his eyes wide and looked at her curiously. His two little hands were probing. First, he touched her hair. Then, his big eyes were attracted by the necklace on Yun Shirshir's neck. So he reached out to grab it. The child was small and didn't know what to do. He was a little strong. When Jingqi saw this, she rebuked. Yang Yang, be good. Don't move. Yun Shirshir immediately said, It's okay. She couldn't help but feel a little regretful, because she couldn't take a good look at the child in front of her. However, hugging the soft little cub, it was as if she had returned to a few years ago when Yu was just born. His body was also small and soft, as if he was made of water or glutinous rice balls. It was as if he could be flattened and rounded at will. She hugged him carefully. Although she was a little unfamiliar with the way she carried the child, she was professional enough. One look, and one could tell that she had been a mother. The little fellow became even more intimate with her. It felt so comfortable being hugged by her. Its pair of eyes were curved like crescent moons as it giggled and babbled. Who knew what it was talking about? Hua Jin replied, The operation went very smoothly. There were no signs of rejection. The little guy's eyes are especially beautiful. When he grows up, he should be as handsome as me. Shameless, she retorted. He'll definitely be more handsome than you. Sister, you're so biased. My face is praised by my fans as the most beautiful woman in the world. You're a little fresh meat now, but in a few years, won't you also become old cured meat? No matter how beautiful you are, you'll still get old. As she spoke, she ruffled his silky hair and smiled. This little guy is so tender that I can squeeze water out of him. Jingqi asked carefully, Are you friends with Mr. Guxingzi? Yun Shirshir smiled, but it was a little bitter. Yes. Chapter 2950. Yun Shirshir said, I'm not a big star. I only entered this industry because of my love for performing. Jingqi could not help but feel a little touched. She had heard that big stars were very good at acting like big shots and putting on airs. After all, they had always been under the spotlight. The love of their fans, the flowers and applause, and their annual income was tens of millions. Even Guxing's annual income was in the hundreds of millions. Therefore, these big stars were definitely superior to others. Therefore, when she first saw Yun Shirshir, Jingqi could not help but feel a little uneasy and at a loss. At the same time, she felt a little inferior and looked up to her. However, Yun Shirshir's easygoing nature surprised and touched her. She did not put on airs at all. When she said that she was not a big star, she was definitely not hypocritical. Deep down, she thought that she was just an ordinary person. You're different from other celebrities. Jingqi smiled. You're so famous, but you don't put on airs when you talk to me. As she spoke, she walked over and asked with concern, I wanted to ask just now, your eyes, are they injured? I think you can't see anything? Yun Shirshir said calmly, Yes, my eyes are a little injured, and I can't see anything. Is that so? Jingqi furrowed her brows in confusion. She was meticulous and seemed to have thought of something. She asked strangely, Aren't you Guxing's friend? Then, when he donated his cornea back then, you could have accepted his cornea as a donor for the transplant. Yun Shirshir did not say anything. Jingqi could not help but ask sensitively, Am I being nosy? I'm sorry. I'm a boorish person, and I don't know how to talk. Sometimes it's clearly a sentence of concern, but when it comes out of my mouth, it doesn't sound good. It's a little harsh. Don't take it to heart. If I'm being nosy, I won't ask. No, Yun Shirshir said lightly, I can't undergo the surgery now because I'm pregnant. If I undergo the surgery, it won't be good for the fetus. I want to protect the child. Let's put the matter of my eyes aside for now. I see. So that's how it is. She cursed silently in her heart. this beautiful superstar, should be very good friends with Gu Xingze. This was because when she saw Yun Shirshir holding the child, the look in her eyes was not just pure love. Instead, it was a kind of pity, pain, and even longing. She clearly couldn't see, but her gaze seemed to be able to see something through the child. Yun Shirshir lovingly hugged Jing Yang in her arms, but Jing Qi knew in her heart that the longing and heartache on her face was not because of her love for the child. She didn't understand if this was a disguised form of entrusting. She placed her longing for Gu Xingze on this child. Jing Qi came back to her senses and said with a smile, "Congratulations! You're going to be a mother." Yun Shirshir smiled. "Thank you." She suddenly turned her head and gently stroked the little fellow's face. Her eyes inevitably revealed some regret. "What a pity! I can't see. Otherwise, I could have taken a good look at what the little fellow looks like. In the future, when your eyes recover and the little fellow grows up, I'll definitely hold his hand and show him to you so that you can have a good look." Chapter 2951. Yun Shirshir smiled when she heard that. "Well, that's good too." Jing Qi added, "Although cornea donors are hard to find, you're different from us. If you have a wide network, you'll have many channels to obtain cornea donors." Yun Shirshir only nodded but didn't say anything. In fact, for the former Mu Yaja, the Mu Corporation had so many medical industries under its name. It could be said that it controlled a wide range of resources. But it was different now. After Mu Yaja left, the Mu Corporation completely removed him from the Mu family. What did that mean? Even his name wasn't on the family tree. Therefore, most of the Mu Corporation's medical resources were still in the hands of the Mu Corporation. The Shengyu Corporation was a financial consortium and real estate company. Recently, it had made a bold move into the internet industry and established internet technology. However, the only thing that he was concerned about was the Mu Corporation's medical industry. Mu Yaja had always been ambitious and coveted the Mu Corporation's medical industry. He wanted to annex it and take it for himself. However, this was not something that could be done in a short period of time. However, Yun Shirshir was optimistic about regaining her sight. No matter what, she would live well. After leaving the hospital, Hua Jin helped Yun Shirshir into the car. It was not until they got into the car that Hua Jin heaved a sigh of relief. "Why are you sighing?" Yun Shirshir laughed at him. Hua Jin muttered, "Fortunately, the scene I imagined didn't happen." "What scene?" Hua Jin said awkwardly. "To tell you the truth, I thought that when I brought you to the hospital and imagined you hugging the child, you'd definitely burst into tears. You'd cry so hard that you'd be out of breath, and the world would turn dark again." Yun Shirshir's lips twitched. "Am I that pretentious?" Hua Jin glanced at her from the corner of his eyes, as if he was silently teasing her. Yun Shirshir retorted, "I'm not that weak." "Why not?" Hua Jin said aggrievedly. "You don't know this, but at that time, because of Xingzhe, you didn't have any appetite and couldn't sleep. You felt empty, as if your soul had left your body. Qin Zhou brought over the videotape that Xingzhe had recorded before he was born. Brother-in-law had only just started playing it, and you were already crying like a broken dam. You don't know that when he sees you cry, even the Gong Jia secretly wipes his eyes." "Mr. Gong Jia?" Yun Shirshir's face twitched again. "What is this? Why do you call him that?" "That's because he looks so fierce. I feel that if I call him by his name, he will be angry, so I always call him Lord Gong Jia." Yun Shirshir couldn't help but imagine that Gong Jia had his hands on his hips and looked arrogant. She couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Hua Jin grumbled, "All right, don't make fun of me. It's my fault for being so afraid of him. In the future, if Shao Jia bullies you or gives you attitude, I will definitely back you up." Don't. I can't bear the responsibility. When Huajin heard this, his face turned pale, and he trembled. Yun Shishir looked confused. Why? She didn't know why, but she felt that Huajin had an inexplicable fear and apprehension towards Gong Jia. Was it necessary? He made Shao Jia seem like a demon king. You don't know, right? He. When he found out that you acknowledged me as your brother, he couldn't stand the sight of me. When, chapter 2952, when Huajin talked about the past, he felt so sad that he wanted to wipe away his tears. When you were asleep, he made things difficult for me. When we ordered takeout together, I could only eat vegetarian food, and he only allowed me to eat half a bowl of rice. When I wanted to stay by your side, he chased me away. When I refused to leave, he grabbed me by the collar and asked me to go home. When I washed some clothes for you, he stood by the side and glared at me like a tiger watching its prey. That was unbelievable. Yun Shishir never knew that Shao Jia could be so jealous. All right, don't be afraid of him. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders. Both of them are my favorite younger brothers. I love them both, regardless of who they are or who they are. Huajin smiled contentedly. Oh, by the way, why don't we eat out tonight? Yu and Xiao Chen went on a spring outing, so they won't be back for dinner. I can't be bothered to prepare dinner. Okay, but you have to inform your brother-in-law first. Huajin nodded. Okay, I'll call him now. Mu Yaja received a call from Huajin. Huajin said that Yun Shishir rarely went out, so he took her out to walk around and bask in the sun. After that, they settled dinner outside. He was a little worried and asked a lot of questions. Huajin comforted him, saying that they had brought enough people with them for this trip, so there was no need to worry about any danger. Mu Yaja was relieved. Come back early. Yes, sir. After Huajin hung up the phone, Mu Yaja raised his wrist to look at the time. It was already 4 in the afternoon. He tidied up the table and called Lu Jinyu. After handing over some simple tasks to him, he drove out of the office. Naturally, he did not go home immediately. Instead, he drove to another villa. The villas in Yulong Bay were once developed by the Mu Group. Back then, he had already started to secretly set up his own company. In order to raise funds, he had acquired a few properties and conducted 2 rounds of financing. After the financing, the properties were vacant, and he was not in a hurry to sell them. After all, the value of real estate was very high, and it was also convenient for financing and investment. The reason he'd rushed to Imperial Dragon Bay was none other than because he'd arranged for Yun Na to stay here some time ago. Mu Yaja parked the car in the basement and got out. He walked to a shutter door and pressed the password. The door slowly opened. The villa had a total of 6 floors, and 2 of them were basements. The first basement was the garage, and the second basement was a very large storage warehouse. Yun Na was then settled in the warehouse. The warehouse was temporarily remodeled. A bed and some furnishings were added. A stainless steel cell door was welded to the inside of the door. Usually, there were 5 people taking turns to guard it. When Mu Yaja walked in, Yun Na was tied to the bed. She had just been injected with a sedative. She kept struggling and screaming. Her throat was hoarse from crying at the top of her lungs, as if countless gravel had accumulated in her throat. She changed her clothes every 3 days. Sometimes the guards were impatient and could not be bothered with her. After being imprisoned for so long, she had almost never taken a shower. Hence, her hair was messy and her face was dirty. On her face, there were bloodstains from her scratches. To prevent her from escaping, her wrists and ankles were handcuffed. Chapter 2953. Yun Na heard the sound of someone walking in and immediately turned her head. However, because she was sedated, her body was weak. This was also related to the fact that she had not eaten for many days. She had been on a hunger strike for 4 days. Therefore, these people who were watching over her tied her to the bed so that they could inject her with a nutrient drip. At first, she was still willing to eat some things. After all, her desire to live had won over everything. She did not want to die. Being locked up in such a confined space for a long time with no one to respond to his cries for help, it was very difficult for him to maintain a good mental state. Therefore, Yun Na could not help but feel a little tormented and actually started to go on a hunger strike. After not eating for 4 days, she had lost a lot of weight and was extremely weak. In order to ensure that her life was maintained, they had no choice but to tie her to the bed. When he walked in, the needle was just inserted into her blood vessel. "It's you! It's you!" When Yun Na saw him, she started to struggle crazily. Her eyes were bloodshot, so red that it seemed like blood could drip out. Mu Yaja ignored her struggle. He glanced at his subordinates and questioned, "What's wrong with her?" "Chairman Mu, she refuses to eat. She has been on a hunger strike for a long time." "Hunger strike?" Mu Yaja laughed coldly. "You're quite capable. Hunger strike? Was she protesting against house arrest?" Mu Yaja? Yun Na glared at him with red eyes. Her face was ferocious as she asked aggressively, "What do you want? Now that I'm in your hands, you can kill me or torture me as you wish. Kill me or torture me as you wish." Mu Yaja curled his lips mockingly. "What a good as you wish." He paused for a moment and suddenly walked to the front of the bed. He lowered his head and lightly sized her up, the smile in his eyes growing deeper. "However, I won't kill you." "What?" In shock, Yun Na widened her eyes in shock and looked at him in disbelief. Mu Yaja said, "Don't worry, I won't let you die." Yun Na's expression changed. "Won't let her die?" Then, in the end, Yun Na couldn't figure out what he was up to. This man was extremely black-bellied. Originally, she thought that if she was taken away by him, he would definitely use all kinds of methods to make her suffer so much that she would wish she was dead. He would use all kinds of cruel and crazy methods to torture and humiliate her. However, it didn't happen. He had only imprisoned her in darkness, but he had not done anything to harm her. Why? She caused Yun Shirshir to become like that, and Gu Xingze to die. In his eyes, she had committed a heinous crime. He should hate her to the core. But now, he was saying that he wanted to keep her alive. In the end, Yun Na could not understand or guess this extremely shrewd man. "What are you trying to do?" she asked warily. "You don't need to know." Mu Yaja could not be bothered with her. He was only here to check on her condition. Seeing that she wasn't half dead like he had imagined, at least it meant that her will to live was strong enough. "Keep an eye on her," Mu Yaja instructed again, and then turned to leave. Behind him, Yun Na asked hysterically, "What do you want?" "Mu Yaja, kill me?" "With your methods. Why don't you give me a quick death?" Mu Yaja stopped in his tracks, and a thick aura of viciousness appeared on his back. "Give you a quick death." Chapter 2954. He laughed mockingly and glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. He said coldly, "There's something that I haven't gotten back from you yet. Don't even think about it." Yun Na was stunned when she heard that. She was a little confused by the thing he was referring to. What thing? What exactly did he say that he wanted to get back from her? What is it? However, Mu Yaja wasn't in a hurry to respond to her bewilderment. "You don't need to know." His back was facing her, but it was obvious that he didn't want to waste too much time on her. He was only here to check on her condition. Seeing that she was in good condition, he didn't plan to stay any longer. The cell door was locked from the inside. Yun Na looked at his retreating figure in panic and despair. she asked hysterically. What exactly is it? Tell me, tell me. Muyaja, you bastard. Why are you imprisoning me here? What's your motive? Answer me. The only response she got was the heavy sound of the shuttered door closing. With a loud bang, the door fell heavily on the ground. Darkness enveloped her as if she was isolated from the world. She clenched her fists tightly, but there was no room for her to struggle. Her expression was twisted like a trapped beast. Muyaja had just gotten into the car when his cell phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and saw that it was Lu Jinyu. He frowned and picked up the call. Hello, boss. I heard that sister-in-law isn't home for dinner tonight. Yeah, Muyaja couldn't help but be surprised. He didn't mention this to him. When Hua Jin called, he happened to be standing by the side. He probably heard that Yun Shirshir wasn't home for dinner through the phone. What's the matter? Lu Jinyu chuckled evilly and said seductively, It's rare that sister-in-law isn't home. Since there's already someone taking care of her, why don't you come with us to have some fun? Muyaja frowned and looked at the phone screen in disdain. He knew that Lu Jinyu wouldn't call him for anything good. No. As he spoke, he was about to hang up. Lu Jinyu hurriedly said, Chief, don't hang up. Sigh. Actually, I'm doing this for your sake. Look, eldest sister-in-law has been pregnant for so long, so you must be reluctant to touch her. No man can resist not having sex for so long, right? Boss, you're also a man. Don't you have any needs? As your little brother, I'm also very good at dealing with matters. I'll definitely try my best to satisfy you. You're here because of this? Muyaja sneered. He wondered what Lu Jinyu's motive for calling him was. So it was to tease him. As a subordinate, of course I have to be considerate of my superior. Boss, I'm also a man, so I understand that feeling. If he really couldn't hold it in any longer, there was no need to hold it in. Don't worry. If you go out to have fun, we will definitely keep this matter a secret. Only Jiang Shun and I know, but no one else knows. Muyaja only asked in return, Do you still want next month's bonus? Bonus? To Lu Jinyu, this was a huge threat. Given his position as the second-in-command of Xinyu Financial Corporation, his salary was fixed, but the monthly dividends were not cheap. Chapter 2955. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end, and he immediately corrected himself. Boss, I was just joking. Why did you take it so seriously? I was just testing on behalf of sister-in-law to see if you're honest enough. Hee hee. I wanted to test if boss is loyal to sister-in-law. Muyaja smiled and asked, Have you gotten the results of your test? You even need to ask. Boss was absolutely loyal to his sister-in-law. All right, boss, you're busy. Jiang Shen and I are free to do whatever we want. After he finished speaking, he hurriedly hung up the phone. Muyaja threw his cell phone aside and drove home. When he got home, Hua Jin and Yun Shirshir were still not home. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen had gone for an outing and were not back yet. It was rare for the house to be so empty. He walked into the study and took out a stack of books from the drawer. They were all topics related to motherhood, childcare, and pregnancy. He had secretly bought a large stack of books on this topic behind Yun Shirshir's back, especially on prenatal education and childcare. There were all sorts of books. He had not had the time to read them, and he did not know if he could make up for it in time or if it would be of any use. Usually he would be too embarrassed to take out these books and read them openly in front of Yun Shirshir, especially when Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were around. He would hide these books very well. He was afraid that the two little guys would laugh at him if they saw them. When Yun Shirshir was pregnant with Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen, he was not by her side at that time. Other than that night when he went to visit her and successfully got pregnant, he did not appear in front of her again. He vaguely remembered that when she was pregnant, she had attended some prenatal education classes. At that time, they had played Mozart's music and Chopin's piano pieces. However, when Xiao Chen grew up, he did not seem to have any talent or luck in music. Instead, he was tone deaf. Looking at Yu Yu, he did not seem to be any better. This point was a little strange. Although he wasn't particularly talented in singing, at least he had a good grasp of the 5 tones. Yun Shirshir's voice was very pleasant to listen to, and when she sang, she was also quite good. Why was it that when it came to these 2 fellows, they were tone deaf? Could it be that the prenatal education was not done well? Some time ago, Yun Shirshir pestered him to read bedtime stories. However, it wasn't for Yu Yu and Xiao Chen, but for the little guy in her stomach. Mu Yaja muttered, "Can she hear you?" Yun Shirshir felt so wronged that the rims of her eyes turned red. He was flustered to coax her, but in the end, he didn't know what he had said wrong to make her suddenly like this. The next day, he specially consulted a new nanny who was one of his employees. As someone who had been through this before, this stay-at-home dad boasted. He said that when a pregnant woman was pregnant, her emotions would fluctuate easily. She would often cry at the slightest thing and become agitated. When Muyaja heard this, he was confused and stunned. In the end, the employee cautiously asked, "Boss, the knowledge of being a stay-at-home dad is very particular." Then he instilled some information into him. Which family's wife did not do well during her confinement? Her health deteriorated greatly, and she often caught colds. Which family's child did not take good care of? Not long after birth, the child became jaundiced and had to be carried under the sun every day. Which family's wife ate and drank too much when she was pregnant and got diabetes? Which family's wife did not receive the love and care of her family after giving birth? She was neglected and suffered from postpartum depression. Chapter 2956. Thus, he was even more certain that he had to study this aspect of knowledge. Before the child was born, he had to study hard, so that he wouldn't be flustered when the child came into this world. Mu Yaja flipped open a page of the book and began to read it seriously. Naturally, he started with the knowledge of pregnancy. She did not know how long she had been looking at it, but she heard Yu Yu's devilish laughter next to her ear. "Daddy, what are you secretly reading?" Muyaja was shocked. He was so focused that he didn't hear Yu Yu's footsteps when the door to the study was pushed open. He slammed the book shut and turned his head. He saw Yu Yu standing by the side with an evil expression, laughing secretly at him. Yu Yu glanced at the spine of the book lightly. She covered her mouth and laughed secretly. "So, Daddy is studying about pregnancy. Very good. Not bad. Not bad." As she said this, the little girl patted him on the shoulder and said seriously, "But why do I feel like you're doing something bad? You look like you're guilty." Mu Yaja snorted coldly, without batting an eyelid. However, his burning ears betrayed him. Yu saw this, and laughed even more. "Daddy, there's nothing to be shy about. It's good to study hard. A qualified father starts off as a stay-at-home dad." "Get lost." Mu Yaja was furious. Yu turned and ran away. Mu Yaja angrily glanced at his retreating figure. He picked up his teacup and took a sip of tea. However, through the door, she could hear Yu running into the living room and yelling, "Mommy, I'm here. Mommy, I just saw Daddy secretly reading The Complete Knowledge of Pregnancy in the study." Puffed. Muyaja was caught off guard and spat out a mouthful of tea on the book. He didn't have time to wipe the tea stains off before he guiltily hid the book in the drawer. After a while, Yu and Xiao Chen held Yun Shirshir's hand and entered the study. Seeing this, Mu Yaja glared fiercely at Yu. However, the little boy had a sly smile. He glanced at the table and teased, "Ah, Daddy, you're so fast. You secretly hid the book." Xiao Yichen also teased him. "Daddy, study hard. We're not at home, and Daddy didn't go out to play. You're reading obediently at home. Daddy must be trying to learn about pregnancy so that he can be by Mommy's side. Daddy, you're too sneaky's way. You're really unscrupulous in order to please Mommy." The two little lads echoed each other, and Muyaja's face grew increasingly hot. He clenched his fists, cleared his throat sternly, and chided them in a low voice. "Stop fooling around." Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and smiled. She asked, "What are you reading?" "Nothing. I just heard you say that you were reading. I wasn't—" Muyaja stood up immediately and walked to her side with a stiff expression. He frowned and said, "Don't listen to the two children. We're not fooling around. Daddy, reading books isn't something to be ashamed of. You're not reading erotic magazines behind Mommy's back." Before you could finish speaking, Xiao Yichen tugged at his sleeve curiously. What's an erotic magazine?" Yun Shirshir choked on her saliva. Mu Yaja's expression darkened. Chapter 2957. Yu and Xiao Yichen looked at each other. When Mu Yaja wasn't paying attention, they secretly made funny faces at him and stuck out their tongues. The two little lads held hands and left. Mu Yaja was satisfied. He turned around and helped Yun Shirshir to the table. The latter asked curiously, "What were you looking at?" You was making a lot of noise just now. I didn't hear it clearly." "No, nothing. Tell me." The more he tried to hide it, the more curious she was. Her appetite was whetted, and she looked like she wouldn't give up until she got to the bottom of it. Mu Yaja frowned and suddenly thought of something. He opened the drawer, took out one of the books, and passed it to her. Yun Shirshir was stunned for a moment. It was just a book that she couldn't see. How could she read the words with her fingers? She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she hit him. "Hey, are you doing this on purpose? Are you bullying me because I can't see?" "You call this bullying?" Mu Yaja suddenly circled in front of her, grabbed her hands, and inched closer to her suggestively. "Then should I show you what real bullying is?" Yun Shirshir's face instantly heated up. He held her tightly, not allowing her to retreat. In the darkness before her eyes, suddenly, the man's unique fragrance brushed against her face. In the next second, his hot breath covered her red lips. The man squatted in front of her, pinched her chin, and kissed her gently. In the corridor, Yu suddenly thought of something. A sly look flashed across her eyes, and she stopped in her tracks. Just as Xiao Yichen was puzzled, Yu put up her index finger and shushed her. She tiptoed around and walked towards the door of the study. The two little guys sneaked to the unlatched door, only to see Mu Yaja kissing Yun Shirshir in the study. They were entangled and reluctant to part with each other. Xiao Yichen was the most shy. She quickly covered her eyes with her hands and didn't dare to look any longer. Yu, on the other hand, was watching with great interest. Xiao Yichen couldn't stand it anymore. She hurriedly pulled him aside and said with a red face, You're so naughty. How dare you peek at Daddy and Mommy kissing? If Daddy finds out, he's going to be angry. If you and I don't say anything, how will Daddy find out? You said matter-of-factly. Daddy was so immersed in kissing that he didn't notice us. Daddy's a little. Little Yichen also found it strange. It's said that pregnancy makes a woman stupid for 3 years, but why do I feel that Daddy has become stupid when Mommy is pregnant? Puffed. You laughed helplessly. It's not that Daddy has become dumb. It's just that Daddy has become more cautious. He has to double-check everything and consider everything for Mommy's sake, no matter what he does. After all, Mommy has a high status outside the family. She's a precious treasure. If Daddy isn't careful, I won't let him off. That's true. Xiao Yichen's heart ached for Mu Yaja for half a second. Yu wanted to sneak into the study to observe, but Xiao Yichen hurriedly pulled him back. Don't go. Let Daddy and Mommy have some alone time. Let's go have some alone time too. Who wants to have some alone time with you? You glanced at him in disdain. I'm not going to hang out with you. As he said this, he snorted arrogantly and turned to enter the bedroom. Xiao Yichen followed behind and shook his head helplessly. His smile was full of doting as an older brother. Chapter 2958. But then again, he was already used Sundara nature. He followed her into the bedroom and closed the door. In the study, Yun Shirshir was a little absent-minded. After she couldn't see, her hearing had become shockingly sharp. Hence, she could hear the two little munchkins whispering in the corridor. She couldn't help but fidget and kept pushing away Mu Yaja's advances. She asked worriedly, "Is the child eavesdropping outside?" No. Mu Yaja grabbed her hand and wanted to kiss her again. Yun Shirshir turned her head away and said coquettishly, "I heard it. Yu is really naughty. She's always pulling Xiao Yichen to peek at us from outside the door. After all, she has done this before. Don't you know how to discipline her?" "Is this child someone I can discipline?" Mu Yaja retorted. "Not only is she naughty, she's also very smart. You can't discipline her. You, on the other hand..." Mu Yaja changed the topic. Looking down at her face, he smiled and said, "My good wife, don't be distracted." As he said that, he pecked the corner of her lips gently and said a little aggrievedly, "I haven't had sex for more than a month. Even when we're kissing, you're distracted." After saying that, his handsome brows furrowed slightly, as though he wanted to say something but didn't want to. Yun Shirshir was amused by his aggrieved tone and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You sound so pitiful," Mu Yaja said sternly. "You don't know how painful it is for a man to be abstinent." Yun Shirshir was speechless. She wasn't a man, so how would she know what abstinence meant for a man? Especially when they slept on the same bed. Every time she laid in his arms and slept peacefully, he would lower his head and look at her peaceful sleeping face. It was as if her skin could be broken by the wind. It was white and flawless. Her elegant eyebrows and dark red lips were everywhere to tempt him. Every time this happened, his lower abdomen tightened, as though he had accumulated a lot of strength. No matter how determined he was, it was as though his rationality was about to be demonized. Previously, many experienced people had told him about this matter. In the first 3 months and the second 3 months of a woman's pregnancy, they couldn't touch her. In other words, in the 4th month, as long as they were careful and didn't use too much force, there wouldn't be a problem. But Mu Yaja didn't dare to touch her. He always felt that she was too weak to stand up to a gust of wind. That thin and weak body, that bulging belly, and the fact that she was pregnant with a little guy in her belly was already not easy enough. With such a thin waist, if he didn't grab it, he didn't know if it would collapse. How could he bear to touch her? It was already very difficult for her to be pregnant. After all, he had already confirmed that the little guy in her belly was a little princess. He was even more careful and cautious. He was full of anticipation for the arrival of the little princess. In terms of bed matters, he planned to endure it and did not dare to be too indulgent. Hence, Lu Jinyu half-jokingly dragged him out to have some fun. Someone else said, "If you can't do it in bed, there are always other ways to do it." That person inexplicably leaned close to his ear and said, "For example, the mouth can do it too." He. This person was Jiang Shen. He always came up with a lot of bad ideas. Mu Yaja glared at him and chased him aside. How dare you criticize your sister-in-law? You don't want next month's bonus anymore. Chapter 2959. Before he could finish speaking, Mu Yaja glared at him as if he was about to kill him. Jiangshan shut up at the right time. Lu Jinyu laughed out loud. Ashan, don't tease boss. Don't you know? Boss is famous for being a blockhead and a slave to his wife. Look at how boss signed those billion-dollar contracts without batting an eyelid. But if sister-in-law's face gets sullen, boss will definitely be in a hurry to coax her. It's said that many men are very tormented when their wives are pregnant. Those who can bear it will ask their wives to use other methods to resolve it. Those who can't bear it will cheat and have affairs at this time. However, boss is a slave to his wife of the new era. It's only 10 months. Just grit your teeth, and it'll pass just like that. As Lu Jinyu spoke, he said vividly in front of Mu Yaja, Shun, why don't we bring boss out to have some fun tonight? I know a place where the girls are not bad. Be careful, sister-in-law will come after you. Jiangshan smiled evilly and said, Boss, you have to hold on. You have to hold on until the last moment. You have to protect your integrity for sister-in-law. Humph. Mu Yaja pretended to be calm as he flipped open the financial report and said with a calm expression, It's only 10 months. Although he said it casually, when this person lay beside him at night, a certain man suddenly realized how long 10 months was. It was practically light years. What was the feeling of despair? That was when he thought about how he still had to endure for 6 months before he could unload the goods. Sometimes, when he had a reaction, even a cold shower could only temporarily soothe it. When he lay down on the bed and held her in his arms, he felt that indescribable feeling again. Where did he get so much energy from? It seemed that he had to think of a way to exhaust this excess energy. Hence, Mu Yaja decided to set up a gym at home. Every day, he would run for an hour before going to bed, and then do a set of barbells. With this thought in mind, he quickly put it into action. The next day, Yun Shirshir heard the sounds of walls being cut, smashed, and electric drills coming from the basement. A few days later, Mu Yaja directed the construction team to transport the panels for the renovation. A week later, the various fitness equipment he had ordered arrived. Yun Shirshir was dumbfounded. Therefore, when it was time to sleep every day, Mu Yaja would always set aside 2 hours to go to the gym in advance. First, he would run on the treadmill for 50 minutes. Then, he would do 2 sets of dumbbells. After that, she took a shower and went to bed at 10 o'clock. She was exhausted. This method was somewhat useful because working out consumed a lot of excess energy. Once the pillow touched, naturally there would be no more thoughts about sleeping and there would be no energy to think about other things. After a month, his figure had been trained to the point where it could be called a work of the gods. Once, Yu caught a glimpse of Mu Yaja changing his clothes. The moment Mu Yaja took off his clothes, Yu was shocked by his toned muscles and perfect 8-pack abs. When did Daddy's figure become so good? Yu found it extremely strange. Chapter 2960. When Xiao Chen heard this, he ran over to take a peek. In the end, he ran back with a nosebleed. He's so handsome. His eyes were sparkling. Luckily, Mommy can't see. Otherwise, Mommy would be smitten. Are you exaggerating? You don't understand. Xiao Chen looked at him with disdain. Girls can't resist a man with a good figure. You was speechless. Was that so? Hence, Xiao Chen and you would appear punctually at the gym on the basement floor at 8 o'clock in the evening. This time, it was Mu Yaja's turn to be dumbfounded. What are you doing here? Working out. You said in all seriousness. I want to work out too. Mu Yaja muttered gloomily. You're only 7 years old. Why do you need to work out? Yu asked in return, then why did Daddy set up such a gym for no reason and work out so hard every day? Mu Yaja looked embarrassed for a moment. He cleared his throat awkwardly, but didn't answer their question directly. You found it even stranger. Xiao Chen also found it strange. Daddy, you're very suspicious. Mommy can't see such a good figure even though you're working out. Then why are you working so hard to keep fit? Muyaja said in all seriousness, I can't sleep at night, so exercise helps me sleep. Insomnia? Yu looked at him strangely and rubbed his chin. Why would you have insomnia for no reason? That's strange. Muyaja's face darkened. When have I ever seen you so concerned about me? You're the one who's strange. You also looked embarrassed. He definitely wouldn't tell the truth. It was just that when he saw Muyaja's lean figure, he felt envious and yearned for it. He also wanted to work out and train his body. On top of that, Xiao Yichen had been preaching that working out could make one's body healthier and have a stronger immune system. Furthermore, the metabolism during exercise would promote physical development. This caused him to waver, because I feel that Daddy has been very suspicious recently. Daddy never used to work out. Muyaja looked at Yu and saw a burning desire in his eyes. This guy. Yu felt a little guilty under his stare. At the side, Xiao Yichen immediately explained, Daddy's figure has become great after working out. So, Yu and I are very envious and want to work out with Daddy. Go and run on the treadmill for 40 minutes, Muyaja instructed as he pointed at the treadmill. 40 minutes? You wanted to back out. I'll die in 40 minutes. How do you know you can't do it if you haven't tried? The first 30 minutes of running will deplete carbohydrates. 40 minutes will deplete excess fat. After pausing for a while, Muyaja continued, running is good for improving your physical strength. Start with running. Yu and Xiao Yichen glanced at each other and then reluctantly got on the treadmill and started running. After half a month, the results were obvious. Hua Jin realized that the father-son trio would disappear at 8 o'clock sharp. Later on, he squatted down and discovered the father-son trio's shocking secret. These three guys were actually here. Fitness. Chapter 2961. Hua Jin was really jealous. He also wanted to work out. He also wanted to be nice. Body. Hence, Hua Jin also joined the army of fitness. At 8 o'clock in the evening, they all went to the gym together and worked out. Fitness was the ultimate motivator. Muyaja's fitness was not purely about consuming energy. After all, it was also a good way to improve one's figure. His perseverance was definitely not a slacker either. Once he decided to work out, he would definitely persevere until the end. Because of the fitness, his figure had undoubtedly become better. Sometimes at night, when they were lying in bed, Yun Shishir would hug him and feel his strong abdominal muscles. She could not help but feel a little surprised. Your abdominal muscles didn't seem so obvious in the past, right? Yun Shishir was a little puzzled. It's a little strange. You've been so mysterious recently, and your figure has become so good. Could it be that you're working out? You guessed it right, Yun Shishir asked, half jokingly and half seriously. Don't tell me you decided to work out to vent your excess energy. Muyaja's face was serious. Isn't it good to work out? Your figure can be very good. Your figure is so good, but I can't see it either. Yun Shishir was a little disappointed. You will. Muyaja hugged her tightly and smiled. When Yueyao is born and recuperates, we'll immediately arrange for the cornea transplant surgery. But the surgery is not something that can be done just because you want to. Yun Shishir felt a little wronged. After all, cornea donors can only be found by chance. I don't know when the next opportunity will come. You don't have to worry about these things. I'll worry about these things. You just need to take care of yourself and recuperate well. Don't worry about other things. Okay. Yun Shishir nodded. I'll listen to you. The weather was getting hotter. Unknowingly, it was already June, but the weather was already starting to get hot. Every afternoon, it was especially hot and unbearable. Every time Hua Jin came home, he would bring ice cream for the little ones. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen each held a Haagen-Dazs and ate with relish. Haagen-Dazs. Yin Shirshir was drooling. She used to love Haagen-Dazs when she was still an office worker. This is the Hermes of the ice cream industry. Although Yin Shirshir couldn't see, her ears weren't deaf. She heard the two little guys eating ice cream, and her saliva secreted even more. Hua Jin, why didn't you bring me? Yin Shirshir asked angrily. Hua Jin said innocently, brother-in-law said that you can't eat cold food. Why? Yin Shirshir asked gloomily, why can't I eat ice cream? That's not fair. Yu Yu licked his lips, still yearning for more. When he heard his mother grumbling at the side, he explained, Daddy read in a book that pregnant women should avoid contact with ice as much as possible. I don't remember the exact reason, but in any case, Daddy's words are clear and logical. Mommy, just bear with it for a while. For the sake of sister's health, don't touch ice cream. Muyaja had read the Encyclopedia of Pregnancy before. It said that pregnant women shouldn't eat cold food, or even touch it. Research showed that when a pregnant woman's hand touched ice, the blood vessels in the uterus would contract, which would affect the blood circulation of the fetus and affect its growth. Therefore, he repeatedly ordered her not to touch anything cold. Chapter 2962. It was fine when the weather was cool, but in the middle of summer, the air conditioner alone was not enough to relieve the heat. Everything she drank was warm. Yin Shirshir was about to complain. Why are you guys not moving? How does it feel to drink warm water on such a hot day? I feel like there's a ball of fire in my body. I'm about to burn. I'm burning. Hua Jin and Yu Yu looked at each other and gave Yin Shirshir a sympathetic look. Xiao Yichen, who was beside them, felt his heart ache even more. Yin Shirshir sat at the table and held the teacup in her hand with an aggrieved expression. The teacup was filled with hot water that had just been boiled, as it had not cooled down yet. She was so thirsty that her throat was about to smoke. She could not drink any water. It was too hot. These days are simply too torturous. She wept and wailed, her hopes dashed. It was easy to be anxious during pregnancy. Moreover, it was summer. More importantly, her situation was very different from when she first got pregnant. When she was first pregnant, Muyaja had sent a top-notch nursing team to take good care of her food, clothing, and daily necessities. At that time, she was 18 years old and pregnant for the first time. The pregnancy symptoms were not serious. At first, she had some morning sickness and did not have a good appetite. Hence, the nurse in charge of taking care of her put in a lot of effort to adjust her appetite. Fruit yogurt, potato salad, watermelon juice, orange juice. Due to the need to nourish the fetus, she was arranged to live in a villa near the sea. Although she did not leave the house, the villa had a large courtyard, rockery, and flowing water. When she was free, she would take a walk in the courtyard. When she took a walk, a large group of people followed, closely behind her. After all, the child in her stomach was precious. Muyaja repeatedly emphasized that if anything happened to the child, they would be held accountable. They could not bear the responsibility. Hence, they took good care of her 24 hours a day. For the first 6 months of her pregnancy, she would take a half-hour walk every day. It was because she heard that if she exercised more during pregnancy, the delivery would be much smoother. Sometimes, when the weather was good, she would go to the beach, step on the tide, walk barefoot on the beach, and pick up seashells. When she returned home, she settled down and made a wind chime with the seashells and hung it on the window. Her craftsmanship was especially good, and the wind chimes she made were beautiful and unique. When the sea breeze blew, the shells gently swayed, making a crisp and pleasant sound. At that time, although the days were leisurely, she was never idle. She would read books, do her homework, watch TV. When she was free, sit on the swing in the courtyard and bask in the sun. Every day, she would arrange herself to the fullest. However, things were different now. She couldn't see, so it was inconvenient for her to do anything. When it came to pregnancy, it was extremely boring. There was a little one in her stomach. She had to carefully protect her, but she also had to worry about this and that. Reading books, watching TV, surfing the internet on his phone, doing handicrafts, drawing, it was basically impossible for her to complete it on her own. Most of the time, she could only sit on the recliner and listen to music. Mu Yaja specially bought a lot of albums for her, saying that he wanted to give the baby prenatal education and cultivate his temperament. Temperament? All right. What Mozart? What Chopin? What Richard Bradman? Oh my God! Let her go. Chapter 2963. But other than listening to music, she seemed to have nothing else to do. Even though she was craving for some snacks on a whim, just as she opened a packet of potato chips, Yu appeared out of nowhere and snatched the packet away from her. He said righteously, "You can't secretly eat potato chips. There's selenum in potato chips. If it's eaten in large quantities, it might cause fetal abnormalities. Although the potato chips have been processed at high temperatures, they still contain high levels of oil and salt, which can cause pregnancy hypertension." "I ate potato chips when I was pregnant with you too," Yun sure said, feeling wronged. "Weren't you fine?" "That's because I was strong enough." You clenched her fists. "But it's better to be safe than sorry. What if? Am I right? Mommy, when little sister is born, you'll be free. Hold on a little longer." She couldn't eat spicy food. She couldn't eat ice. She couldn't eat too much meat either. She couldn't eat too much sugar either. More importantly, ever since she got pregnant, she really had nothing to do besides listening to music and taking a stroll after meals. More importantly, Mu Yaja's nursing skills were indeed passable. After all, he was born into a rich family and had never served anyone before. This was his first time serving someone, and it was her, although his attitude was good. But in the middle of the night, she was suddenly awakened by hunger. Her stomach was growling. She turned her head and saw that Mu Yaja was sleeping soundly. Hence, she snapped her fingers lightly, and the voice-activated wall lights lit up. Ever since her eyesight had deteriorated, Mu Yaja had changed all the lights in the house to motion sensor lights. Although her eyesight wasn't good, especially at night, it didn't mean that she couldn't see anything. If the wall lights were on, she could still make out the faint light. Hence, he changed them to motion sensor lights. As long as there was even the slightest sound, the lights would light up. Wherever she went, the lights would illuminate the place. At least, she could use the light to determine her direction. Where there were lights, he had removed all the furnishings, and there were no obstructions. Even Yu did not expect such thoughtfulness, but Mu Yaja was the first to take it into consideration. Yun sure was amazed by such a high-tech light control system. However, it was much more convenient after changing the light control system. She followed the light and groped her way to the shelf. She took a packet of biscuits and tore off the packaging. Mu Yaja was awakened by the sound of cracking. His first reaction when he woke up was, there was a rat. Then he heard the crunching sound of a mouse eating a biscuit. When he turned around, he realized that Yun Shir was no longer there. Only then did he guess that the sound must have come from a hungry kitten in the middle of the night. Following the sound, he walked into the living room and saw someone sitting on the sofa, happily munching on a biscuit. He didn't go forward to disturb her. He quietly crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, watching her eat. Yun Shirshir was so hungry that she couldn't care less about her image. She stuffed the biscuits into her mouth carelessly. She held a bottle of mineral water in her right hand and gulped it down from time to time. She seemed to be eating too quickly and choked. Mu Yaja walked over nervously and sat down beside her. He gently patted her back. Eat slowly. No one's fighting with you. Yun Shirshir heard his voice and was stunned. She looked up. You're awake. Chapter 2964. Yeah, I was woken up by the sound of you eating. He stroked her back gently as he said, those who didn't know better would have thought that there was a rat in the house. You said that I sounded like a rat when I ate the biscuits. She questioned, feeling hurt. What? She felt aggrieved and unhappy. However, he was amused. Aren't rats cute? Speaking of which, you seem to be eating in such a hurry. Are you that hungry? Yeah, I don't know why, but I was woken up by hunger. I remember that I ate quite a lot last night. Why am I so hungry? It's probably because the baby is hungry. Really? Yun Shirshir smiled. All right, I feel that it's especially difficult when I'm pregnant with this guy. After a pause, she held his arm and said coquettishly, Hubby, I want to eat ice cream. No. Mu Yaja immediately put on a straight face. You're not allowed to eat it. She begged again. Boo-hoo. Just one bite. Just one bite, okay? Can't you bear with it? I don't know why, but I've been craving ice cream lately. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned ice cream. The moment he mentioned ice cream, her saliva secreted even more. She swallowed a mouthful pitifully and said, One bite will do. Can you satisfy my craving? No. His stance was firm, and he didn't waver because of her grievances. If you can't eat it, you can't eat it. How can you be so heartless? Yun Shirshir said angrily, Can't you be more open-minded? Madam, I'm already very open-minded. I'm doing this for your own good. If it's for my own good, shouldn't you be looking for ice cream on the streets for me? She was being unreasonable. However, he was still very patient. He patted her head gently and coaxed, Be good. Go to sleep after eating. Don't think about it, and you won't be hungry anymore. But I just can't stop thinking about it. Be good. Mu Yaja leaned close to her ear and said meaningfully, I can resist not touching you for 10 months. Can't you resist not touching ice for 10 months? Yun Shirshir's face flushed red in an instant. She clutched the corner of her pajamas tightly and said awkwardly, I heard that even when you're pregnant, as long as you're careful in the first 3 months, it won't affect you in bed. No. Mu Yaja, on the other hand, was a conservative. He said stubbornly, As long as there's even the slightest risk, I won't allow it. You're being too cautious. What if... He suddenly held her shoulders and stared at her. It's because I care too much that I'm careful in everything. Even if there's a little risk, I won't do it. There's no what if, and I won't allow any what if. It was precisely because he cared too much that he was so careful about everything, no matter how big or small. He was afraid that if he was not careful, something would happen to her and the child in her stomach. Perhaps ordinary people would find it difficult to understand his feelings. He didn't want the child in his belly to be hurt at all, and he didn't want her to suffer at all. He knew in his heart that the days of pregnancy were indeed torturous. Moreover, she couldn't see or do anything. Even reading books was the most extravagant thought. That was why he had spared no effort to spare more time to accompany him. Chapter 2965. It was a good thing that he had 2 capable assistants. However, Lu Jinyu and Jiang Shun could not voice their grievances. Those who didn't know better would think that Boss was pregnant for 10 months. Yun Shirshir could only give up. She reluctantly let him hold her hand and returned to the bedroom. Mu Yaja carried her to the bed and covered her with the blanket. After he got on the bed, Yun Shirshir suddenly turned around and hugged him. "Thank you." Huh. He raised his eyebrows in surprise. However, she heard her say, "Have I been making trouble for no reason recently?" Before he could speak, she continued in frustration, "I don't know why, but recently my temper has been getting harder and harder to control. If I don't get satisfied with the small things, I feel especially anxious and want to flare up. Have I always made you angry?" "No." Muyaja smiled and said, "Madam, this is a special period now. I'll give in to you more." In other words, even if I'm unreasonable, you won't stoop to my level? Yun Shirshir teased him deliberately. When Muyaja heard this, how could he not know that she was deliberately digging a hole for him to jump into? However, he was a smart person. He knew that if he said yes directly, she might be unhappy. Therefore, he asked seriously, "How is this being unreasonable? Madam is righteous, gentle, and virtuous. I can't wait to dote on you." Although Yun Shirshir knew that he was deliberately coaxing her, her heart was still as sweet as honey. "All right, stop fooling around." Muyaja pulled her into his arms and reminded her, "Sleep early." Lying in his arms, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. "Is this the happiest moment of my life? Why do I feel a little uneasy?" Muyaja raised his eyebrows, not understanding what she meant. "I'm so happy now. I don't know what the future will be like, but this should be the happiest moment of my life. I'm so happy that I feel like it's almost unreal." "No." Muyaja gently stroked her hair. "I will make you happier. I want to give you the most beautiful things in the world." Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and fell asleep peacefully on his chest. Not long after, he began to snore softly. Sleeping so soon, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He rubbed her face. Pig. Thus, with her in his arms, he fell asleep contentedly. However, not long after, Yun Shirshir's resentment towards the ice cream came again. The weather was getting hotter. Hua Jin seemed to be deliberately provoking hatred. He wholesaled a large batch of ice cream, Haagen-Dazs Baxi Cornetto, and all kinds of other ice creams. Yu returned home and opened the fridge. When she saw the fridge full of ice cream, she broke out in a cold sweat. She couldn't help but wonder if this Hua Jin did it on purpose. Did he deliberately use ice cream to attract hatred? Didn't he know that Mommy had been complaining for a long time because she couldn't eat ice cream? What a huge grudge. Life is hard, so don't expose it, okay? Mommy is already having a hard time. However, Hua Jin said that the weather was getting hotter. If they went out to buy ice cream every day, they would be melted by the sun just by walking. It was better to do it all at once. You felt that it made sense. Every afternoon, Hua Jin and the two little munchkins would sit at the entrance of the back garden, eating ice cream and chatting. Yun Shirshir sat at the side, hugging Liang Baikai, her face full of resentment. Chapter 2966. Mommy, just be good. Yu muttered, "Bear with it for a while, and you'll have a bright future." "Can't I just have one bite?" "Not even one bite. Daddy will beat me up." Yu snorted. Xiao Chen covered his mouth as he snickered. "He might even punish you with the crime of murdering the little princess." Yu nodded in agreement. Yun Shirshir stood up angrily and walked slowly in their direction. When Hua Jin saw this, he immediately reached out to help her up. "Sister, be careful." Yun Shirshir flung his hand away angrily and said speechlessly, "Don't touch me. I'm not your sister." Hua Jin, who was innocently implicated, cried helplessly, "Why am I implicated as well?" You didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said, "How is this being implicated? You're the real source of all evil." "What do you mean by that?" Hua Jin pointed at himself. wanting to cry but having no tears. How am I the source of all evil? Yu said, if you hadn't seduced Mommy on purpose, Mommy wouldn't have been so greedy. A pot floated down from the sky. It hit Hua Jin hard on the head. Hua Jin hugged the pot and said pitifully, all right, my pot. It's just pregnancy. It's not my first time. When I was pregnant with you guys, I wasn't so careful. I couldn't touch this or that. Weren't you guys healthy? When Yu heard this, she immediately cleared her throat and pouted. That's not fair. Xiao Yichen's body is so strong. But, Mommy, have you forgotten that I spent most of my time in the hospital before I was 4 years old? So it turns out that you didn't take good care of the fetus during your pregnancy. Perhaps my poor physical fitness is related to this. It would have been better if she had not explained it this way. Once she did, Yu felt that Muyaja was right. She was even more convinced of the importance of taking care of the fetus. Another pot was thrown from the sky, and this time it was directly smashed on Yun Shirshir's head. She was completely confused as she silently cursed in her heart, your physical fitness isn't good. It's not because you're in the nurturing period. Yun Shirshir explained, innocently, you and Xiao Yichen are twins. The doctor said that when you were in my stomach, you were competing for nutrients. You couldn't compete with Xiao Yichen. Also, you were born prematurely 8 months ago. Because you were born prematurely, you were weak. Why is it premature? Yu asked curiously, blinking. The doctor said that it's because of the anxiety during the pregnancy, plus, at that time, when she was more than 7 months pregnant, Yun Shirshir asked for permission to meet Yun Yecheng. That period of time was when the Yun family was at its most difficult. However, even though they had been meeting, Yun Yecheng was very extreme about her surrogacy. He was once so proud. How could he watch his beloved daughter use her body as the price to repay the Yun family's debt? This debt to the loan sharks might be cleared in an instant. However, the guilt he felt toward her was something that he would never be able to repay in this lifetime. Therefore, every time they met, the father and daughter would sit opposite each other. He would always think of all sorts of ways to persuade her to abort the child. Yun Yecheng's thinking was very simple, but he did not know that if she were to abort the child, it would be even more harmful to her body. Chapter 2967. Hence, during that period of time, the pressure and burden on her heart were too heavy. Her first child was twins. Furthermore, she was only 18 years old when she got pregnant. Compared to other pregnant women of her age, the preterm delivery rate was 11 times higher. Furthermore, her emotions fluctuated greatly. One morning, when she woke up, she had just gotten out of bed and walked a few steps when she felt something strange in her body. On the way back to school, in the car, she suddenly felt a warm liquid sliding down her thighs. It turned out that her amniotic fluid had broken. As there was still a long way to go before the due date, no one had expected the sudden premature birth. She was then rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, her life was saved. Hua Jin suddenly mumbled, if it's just a little bit, it shouldn't be a problem, right? No way. Yu insisted. If anything happens to Mommy, Daddy will tear you to pieces. Hua Jin swallowed his saliva in horror. So brutal, of course. His sister is his life. With her around, we'll lose our status. As he spoke, Yu and Xiao Yichen hugged each other and cried. Xiao Yichen, I suddenly feel so sad. Yun Shirshir was speechless. When did these two little guys become so dramatic? Yun Shirshir argued with the three of them for a long time, but it was all in vain. However, this stubbornness didn't diminish at all, especially at night, when she was forced to lie in bed and cover herself with a thin blanket, because a certain man solemnly said that pregnant women shouldn't be exposed to too much air conditioning, and that it wasn't the dog days of summer, yet Mu Yaja only turned the air conditioner fan on. She begged him to turn it on, and he finally turned it to 29 degrees. 29 degrees. Wasn't that the same as not turning it on? Because of the stuffy heat in the house, she missed the sweet and frosty taste of ice cream. Hence, for some reason, she got out of bed and tiptoed to the man's room. Pushing open the door, she made her way to his bed. Pa! A hand covered Hua Jin's face. Hua Jin was sleeping soundly. In his dream, a terrifying hand suddenly reached out towards him and touched his face. He was startled awake from his dream and saw Yun Shirshir sitting by his bedside, softly calling out to him, "Hua Jin, wake up." "What's wrong?" Hua Jin immediately sat up nervously and looked at her worriedly. "Are you not feeling well?" I really want to eat ice cream." "Hua Jin, can you take me to eat ice cream?" Hua Jin, he looked at her with a puzzled expression. He really didn't know what kind of obsession made her come all the way to his room in the middle of the night to beg him to take her to eat ice cream. His room was quite a distance away from hers, and there was even a staircase. It must have taken her a lot of effort to find her way here. "Is it necessary?" Hua Jin was about to cry from laughing. "Do you really want to eat ice cream that much?" Yes, yes. Whenever I hear about ice cream, I salivate." Chapter 2968. Hua Jin, if you can't even fulfill such a small request, I'm going to be depressed. Hua Jin looked at her with heartache. Perhaps, in the eyes of others, such a request was too pretentious. But to him, he could understand it very well. When other people were pregnant, at least their eyes were useful. Even if they had a strong desire for something, they could still do other things to distract themselves. But she couldn't. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't do anything. She could draw, embroider, read, watch television, surf the internet, play games. She even needed someone to support her when she took a walk. It was extremely boring. Probably not many people could tolerate it. Or perhaps, if it were someone else, they would probably be diagnosed with depression. Hua Jin hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, he reached for his cell phone and said, "Wait a minute." "Huh, what are you doing?" she asked curiously. Hua Jin didn't answer immediately. She could only hear the sound of web pages being switched on his cell phone. A few minutes later, Hua Jin put down his cell phone and said to her, "I did some research just now. It said that if it's just a little, it's okay to eat something cold once in a while. Moreover, the weather is hot now, so it's not a big taboo." Hua Jin snapped his fingers and said, "Just the right amount." "Yes, just the right amount." "Right? I was right, wasn't I?" Yun Shirshir said agitatedly. "They said that pregnant women shouldn't be in front of the computer for too long because there will be radiation. But in reality, when I used to work, many of my colleagues were pregnant, but I didn't see any of them quit their jobs. She only went back on maternity leave to prepare for labor when she was about to give birth. The little ones that she gave birth to are all healthy. But there's no more ice cream at home." Hua Jin looked at her expression and said carefully, "Yu and Xiao Chen have eaten it all." "Why are these two little guys eating so fiercely?" she muttered. Hua Jin looked at her and laughed. Okay, stop muttering. I'll take you to find ice cream now, okay?" "Okay, then change your clothes." "All right." Hua Jin held her hand and led her to the cloakroom. He took all the clothes for her, closed the door, and let her change. He was wearing home clothes, so it didn't matter if he didn't change. After Yun Shirshir changed her clothes, Hua Jin secretly stole a key and led her to the garage. He helped her into the front passenger seat, then sat in the car and started the car. "It's already 12 o'clock. I'm afraid there aren't any ice cream shops open. It doesn't matter if it's not Haagen-Dazs." Hua Jin held the steering wheel and thought for a while. Suddenly his eyes lit up. I know a place. Where? The biggest night market in Jing and district. There are also many midnight snacks there. Now that the weather is so hot, every shop will start to sell Baxi ice cream boxes. 8. Yun Shirshi's mouth watered even more. Baxi is delicious too. All right, greedy little cat. I'll take you there. Hua Jin stepped on the accelerator, and the car slowly drove out of the garage. He was so focused on talking to Yun Shirshir that he forgot to look in the rearview mirror. After he drove out of the garage, a luxury car parked at the entrance slowly followed behind. Chapter 2969. Hence, the two of them started to chat leisurely. Yun Shirshir asked, "Have you been busy with work recently?" Huajin replied, "I'm not busy. I've taken on a lot of commercials recently. It might have something to do with Lethal Beauty's high viewership ratings." Yun Shirshir was surprised. Lethal Beauty has been very popular recently? Huajin nodded. Yeah, after your character died. The viewership ratings shot up. Yun Shirshir was speechless. Huajin said, "After all, the villain is dead, and the audience's passion for watching shows has been revived. Because of Lethal Beauty's good viewership ratings, I've taken on a lot of commercials." One of the biggest sources of income for a celebrity was advertisements. It was the most important component. Usually, a celebrity's income came from filming movies and TV dramas. With Hua Jin's status, he would get 1 million for filming an episode. After the company's share, he would get 600,000 after tax. In other words, there were 60 episodes of Lethal Beauty, and Hua Jin had a net profit of 36 million. That was a very eye-catching figure. In the entertainment industry, this income was something that many people could only look up to, but this was only a part of the income. Usually, other than acting, each person could film an average of 2 TV dramas and 1 movie in a year. In addition to various variety shows and stage performances, the remuneration from filming commercials still accounted for the majority of the income. The filming period for commercials was usually a few days, and in these few days, they could earn a few million. It could be said that it was easy and simple. Hua Jin had more than 10 endorsements, big and small, from high-end cosmetics to luxury brands, to mobile phones, home appliances, snacks, drinks, shampoo. The advertising economy depended on whether the fans' purchasing power was strong. Hua Jin's fans were especially crazy. Basically, if they got him to endorse, they would definitely make a profit. Hence, it was no wonder that he was feeling so refreshed recently. How could he not be happy about taking on so many commercials? Your popularity has been soaring recently. After all, the male lead role played by Hua Jin was really too likable, introverted, steady, and expressive from the beginning to the end. With the popularity of the TV series, his popularity would definitely rise. My net worth has also increased by many times. Qin Zhou said that it's rising faster than the stock market. Ha ha ha. The car drove to the night market. After parking the car, Hua Jin held Yun Shirshir's hand and searched along the way. Finally, they found a barbecue restaurant that sold Baxi. "Shirshir, you sit here for a while. I'll buy you Baxi." Yun Shirshir sat down obediently, looking forward to Hua Jin buying her beloved Baxi. 3 minutes later, Hua Jin bought 2 servings of Baxi, one with strawberry flavor and the other with chocolate flavor. He walked over with a smile on his face, handed her the box of strawberry flavor ice cream, and opened it for her. "Here, spoon." He handed over a spoon, but just as he sat down, he suddenly sensed a cold aura beside him. He couldn't help but shiver. He raised his head, and his gaze fell on the man standing behind Yun Shirshir. He immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Yun Shirshir heard him suck in a breath of cold air and was also shocked. Her hand that was holding the spoon suddenly froze. She asked nervously, Hua Jin, what's the matter? Sister. He stammered for a while, incoherent. He was obviously scared out of his wits. This made her nervous too. I'm here. Why are you calling me? Chapter 2970. Brother-in-law. Yun Shirshir was stunned when she heard the word brother-in-law. Brother-in-law? For a moment, her mind was racing. Hua Jin's brother-in-law. Isn't he? Yun Shirshir froze and turned her head mechanically. Even though she couldn't see clearly, she could see a tall figure in her hazy vision. He was tall and seemed to be dressed in black, casual clothes. She couldn't see his face clearly, but his imposing aura and Mu Yaja's unique aura made her realize she had been caught red-handed. Why did he follow them here? Yun Shirshir's face was especially stiff. Hua Jin, on the other hand, gulped nervously and laughed. Brother-in-law, why are you here? He smiled ingratiatingly while cursing silently. How did he find his way here? Could it be that they had a GPS tracker on them? When Hua Jin was making up a story, Mu Yaja smirked. You don't have a GPS tracker on you. Then did you send a private investigator to follow us? Hua Jin blurted out. However, he covered his mouth the next second and looked at him awkwardly. He actually blurted it out. Wait a minute. How did he know what he was making up in his mind? Could it be his brother-in-law had a superpower like mind reading? Hua Jin's imagination was running wild. Mu Yaja continued, I don't have mind-reading abilities either. Hua Jin felt even more awkward. He fidgeted and asked, Then how do you know what I'm thinking? What you're thinking is written all over your face. Mu Yaja paused for a moment. His gaze fell on the ice cream in his and Yun Shirshir's hands, and his gaze became even colder. Eating ice cream in the middle of the night? Mu Yaja's gaze revealed a hint of danger. He scrutinized him again. His cold and unpredictable gaze was really chilling. Hua Jin felt his hair stand on end under his stare. Just as he was about to explain himself, Yun Shirshir sat up properly and said with a smile, Hua Jin said that he suddenly wanted to eat ice cream, so I accompanied him here. She smashed the big wok on Hua Jin's head. Hua Jin, what? He was betrayed just like that. Hua Jin was trembling in fear. Hearing this, Mu Yaja's meaningful gaze landed on him. Startled, he was about to clear his name from the suspicion when Mu Yaja interrupted him. But unexpectedly, Yun Shirshir seemed to know what he was going to explain. She reached her hand under the table and pinched Hua Jin's thigh. Hua Jin shuddered as his eyes turned red from the pain. He subconsciously blurted out, Yes, sister is right. Only then did Yun Shirshir let go. She looked uneasy. Hua Jin was in so much pain that he was about to cry. He immediately used his palm to caress the area where she had pinched him just now. Tears were streaming down his face. He felt bitter inside, but he didn't say it out loud. Mu Yaja obviously saw Yun Shirshir's little action, but he deliberately didn't expose her. His gaze was unfathomable as he smiled slightly. Oh, Hua Jin smiled. I don't know why, but when I woke up in the middle of the night, I really wanted to eat ice cream, but it was too boring to eat it alone, so I dragged her along to accompany me. So, Mu Yaja glanced at him coldly. You're pregnant too? The atmosphere was awkward. What was he most afraid of? He was most afraid of the sudden silence in the air. Hua Jin sat up uneasily. He touched his belly and laughed dryly. Maybe? Ha ha ha. Brother-in-law, your cold joke is so cold. Chapter 2971. Don't stare at me like that anymore, okay? Please, please. I'm also very innocent. Hua Jin chanted the great compassion mantra in his heart as he stood in the middle of Mu Yaja's freezing ray. Yun Shirshir teased, I don't know why, but Hua Jin suddenly had a craving and wanted to eat Baxi. I thought that since I couldn't sleep, I would accompany him to look for food. Ha ha. Muyaja also sneered. Ha ha. Yun Shirshir was speechless. Hua Jin was speechless. The two of them were silently pleading in their hearts. You'd better not laugh. Crying is better than laughing. Yun Shirshir felt extremely guilty. However, she heard Muyaja actually sit down beside her and turn to look at Hua Jin. He propped his chin up lazily and looked at him like a loving elder looking at a junior. Hua Jin became even more uneasy. Brother-in-law, what's the matter? He looked at him, and his tone became strangely gentle. Do you like ice cream that much? Even though it was such a gentle tone, it was extremely cold when it fell on his ears. He felt that there was a hidden meaning in his gaze and words. Hua Jin couldn't help but shudder. He braced himself and nodded. Yes. All right then. Muyaja suddenly stood up and left his seat. Hua Jin didn't care where he was going or what he was going to do. He nervously grabbed Yun Shirshir's sleeve and asked with a sad face, Sister, I don't want to be the scapegoat. Brother-in-law is so cruel. Who knows how he'll teach me a lesson? He won't go to get a whip to whip me, right? That can't be. He won't do anything to you in public. Yun Shirshir was also very nervous. She paused and quickly comforted him, saying, Don't worry, your brother-in-law is very gentle. He won't scold you or hit you. If he dares to hit you, I'll definitely stand in front of you. Really? Hua Jin was skeptical when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around doubtfully and saw Muyaja holding 2 large buckets of Baxi in his hands. He walked to his side and placed them in front of him. I'll treat you. Hua Jin froze. These 2 large boxes of 8 happiness contained 5 small boxes of 8 happiness. As Hua Jin stared blankly, Muyaja sat across from him and looked at him calmly. Let's eat. We'll buy more if it's not enough. It's my treat. Hua Jin showed a reluctant expression. That's not good, is it? Yun Shirshir couldn't see, but she could hear Hua Jin's voice. It sounded like he was about to cry. Didn't you say you wanted to eat? Muyaja smiled deeply. If you don't eat, Hua Jin looked at him eagerly. Muyaja's voice turned cold. If you don't eat, don't blame me for being rude. Yun Shirshir just sat by the side in a dignified manner. But what she didn't see was that Muyaja was sitting opposite Hua Jin, holding a bucket of Baxi in one hand and a spoon in the other. He was tirelessly feeding large chunks of ice cream to Hua Jin. Hua Jin didn't dare to resist. Thinking of his threat, he felt that he should eat up Baxi. Hence, he braced himself and took mouthful after mouthful of ice cream. Even though the weather was hot, his teeth were still chattering from the cold after 1 bucket. Muyaja opened another bucket casually and sent a mouthful of ice cream to his mouth. He ordered calmly, Eat. Woo! The corners of Hua Jin's eyes were twitching. After taking a mouthful, he felt unwell. Chapter 2972. Come, open your mouth. Muyaja raised the spoon. Brother-in-law, can I take it away if I can't finish it? He glanced at the ice cream in his hand and burped. His smile was uglier than his crying face. I'm almost full. Muyaja replied nonchalantly. If you can't finish it, then you'll have to bear the consequences. Hua Jin frowned. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Bear the consequences? What kind of bear the consequences? Muyaja replied proudly. Humph, what do you think? Okay, I'll eat it. Hua Jin looked like he was ready to die. How did it feel to finish 2 buckets and 2 boxes of 8 joys? 1 word to describe it: torture. After Hua Jin got into the car, he looked ahead. Muyaja had packed Yun Shirshir into his personal car. He watched as he carefully buckled Yun Shirshir's seatbelt, got into the driver's seat, started the car, and drove off. He couldn't take it anymore. He held his stomach, and his face turned green. What the hell was this? This man was the #1 wife slave. This couple was really something. Instead of sleeping, they came to torment him in the middle of the night. In the end, why was he the one who got hurt? He was so innocent. In the car, Yun Shirshir nervously clutched her seatbelt as she gulped in trepidation. Hubby, Muyaja raised his eyebrows. What did you do to Huajin just now? Yun Shirshir asked worriedly. He sounded like he was in pain. How much ice cream did you feed him? Muyaja replied, All of it. Yun Shirshir asked, How much was all of it? Muyaja replied, 2 buckets and 2 boxes. Yun Shirshir shuddered. Just thinking about the feeling of eating so much ice cream didn't feel good, right? Suddenly, her obsession with ice cream was not as deep as before. She even felt a little nauseous. If she vomited, Muyaja's goal would be achieved. He asked, Do you still want ice cream? Yun Shirshir hurriedly shook her head. I don't want to anymore. == Bimu Yaja suddenly reached out to hold her hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. Yun Shirshir's heart warmed, and she held his hand. Perhaps it was because he had been holding the ice cream bucket for a long time, but his hands were slightly cold. He didn't say anything, but from this small detail, she immediately understood his unease and heartache. He was such an introverted man who kept everything in his heart. Perhaps he cared too much about it. If you care too much, you will always be afraid of losing it. Therefore, his caution was only to better protect her. I'll be good in the future, Yun Shirshir said in a low voice. Yes, good girl. But Yun Shirshir changed the topic. You fed him so much ice cream. Will anything happen to him? Muyaja was speechless. Yun Shirshir said anxiously, He'll definitely have diarrhea, right? In the bathroom, when Huajin walked out, he was about to collapse. He dragged his long, numb legs out and supported himself against the wall. When he walked into the living room, the sky was already bright. In the living room, Muyaja walked out of the dining room and poured a cup of warm water for him. Drink it. Huajin took the water and leaned against the wall, looking resentful. I think I'm about to collapse. Muyaja raised his eyebrows. Diarrhea? Yes, a little. Muyaja returned to the room and took out a box of stomach medicine for him. Eat this. Chapter 2973. After this experience, Yun Shirshir became more well-behaved. At least, she had learned her lesson. However, the days of nurturing the fetus were still boring. You found some radio dramas, musicals, and even crosstalk for her to pass the time. Life was peaceful and comfortable. Chief, did you know? The Mu group recently released news of their wedding. Mu Yenqing is getting married to Song Enya soon. In the office, Lu Jinyu walked to Mu Yaja's desk and handed him a red announcement. He had gotten it from a media friend. It was said that Mu Yenqing and Song Enya's wedding would be held at 100 banquets. Furthermore, they had also invited celebrities from all walks of life and more than 100 media outlets. It seemed that they were determined to make this wedding a grand and dignified one. Mu Yaja took the invitation and glanced at it expressionlessly. On the invitation was Song Enya and Mu Yenqing's wedding photo. The time and location were also written. He took a closer look. Although it was called a wedding photo, it was more accurate to say that this was not a traditional wedding photo. Song Enya was wearing a wedding dress and holding Mu Yenqing's arm. Mu Yenqing was wearing a suit. The two of them stood in front of a white background and posed for a photo. Oh, Lu Jinyu smiled. Chief, are you going? Mu Yaja glanced at him. Why should I go? To watch the show. It's boring. How can it be boring? The Moo Group and the Song family have been advocating that this wedding must be grand and dignified. At the very least, we should go and see how grand the Moo family can be, so that Chief can refer to it. You and sister-in-law haven't held a wedding yet, right? We can't let our pomp and circumstance fall short. Muyaja smiled playfully. Pomp and circumstance. A wedding isn't just about pomp and circumstance. More importantly, it has to be memorable. They had to be sincere. Jiangshin sat at the side and snorted. The reason why the Moo Group is spending so much money this time is because they want to use this wedding to revitalize the Moo Group's reputation. Just like a destitute aristocrat who is so poor that he has to empty his family's fortune, he has to resort to all means to pretend to be a noble. Lu Jinyu snapped his fingers and said, "To put it simply, it's just posturing." Jiangshin said, "Bingo." Muyaja frowned. Although the Moo Group is in dire straits, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. After all, its power is still stable. Don't let your guard down. Lu Jinyu said, "Boss, aren't you bent on monopolizing the Moo Corporation's medical industry?" "Yes," Jiangshin analyzed. "However, if we forcibly acquire the medical industry under Moo Group, we will definitely suffer a great loss." The Moo Group was now very close to this industry. Although Mu Yanqing was now the head of the Moo Group in name, the real power in the family was still in the hands of Mu Linfeng. If not for Mu Linfeng's hard work, what can Mu Yanqing achieve? Lu Jinyu said, "That old fox Mu Linfeng is not a simple character. He's not easy to deal with." However, given Mu Yanqing's half-baked personality, when Mu Linfeng really collapsed, the Mu family's throne would also crumble in an instant. He won't be able to stay in that position for long. All these years, Mu Linfeng's health doesn't seem to be improving. In such a situation, we can play many cards. Chapter 2974. Jiangshin took a sip of tea and said casually, "However, Mu Linfeng is headstrong and self-opinionated. He can't keep people around at all. Otherwise, Chief wouldn't have taken so many talents away from the Moo Group so easily." "Are you done with your work?" Muyaja interrupted. Lu Jinyu and Jiangshin looked at each other and immediately stood up to head to their offices. Muyaja glanced at the wedding invitation again and threw it into the trash can. Ming City's villa. Meng Qingxue was sitting on the sofa with a wedding invitation in her hand. She flipped open a page and saw a wedding photo of Mu Yanqing and Song Enyo on it. She felt that it was an eyesore. Mu Yanqing and Song Enya's wedding was imminent. She had questioned Mu Yanqing more than once, not understanding why he wanted to marry Song Enya. However, Mu Yanqing smiled and said, "Enya, don't worry. This time, I won't let you down." "Then how do you explain this wedding invitation?" Mu Yanqing only said, "You'll understand when the time comes." Meng Qingxue was baffled by his words, but she still chose to believe him without hesitation. She hoped that he would not disappoint her this time. It was not that she was too blind, but she had seen every change in Mu Yanqing. Ever since they returned to the capital from Yen City, Mu Yanqing had spent almost every night with her. He said that he would arrange for her to stay in a villa to recuperate, so he arranged a private villa for her to recuperate. He also assigned 5 servants and a nanny to take care of her daily needs. Meng Qingxue followed his instructions and focused on recuperating. She was well taken care of. In the past 2 months, she had unknowingly gained 5 kilograms of weight. It was rare for her to gain weight. No matter how much she ate, it was difficult for her to gain half a kilogram of weight. It was clear how well she was taken care of. Not only that, he was afraid that she would be lonely. Occasionally, when he was free, he would bring her around the park, the lakeside, and even drove her to interesting places for a road trip. Perhaps it was because he had almost lost her, but compared to his past indifference toward her, Mu Yanqing cherished her even more now. It turned out that the feeling of being cherished was so blissful. Meng Qingxue originally told herself that if she loved him, half of his love was enough. She shouldn't love him too deeply. She shouldn't love him more than he did. Otherwise, she would be the one suffering. However, being wrapped in such tenderness, she seemed to have fallen into it once again. Mu Yanqing would accompany her to every prenatal checkup without exception. That morning, Mu Yanqing specially applied for leave for the usual prenatal checkup. He did not attend the meeting in the morning and drove her to the hospital. Sitting in the car, Meng Qingxue said a little embarrassedly, "You always take time off to accompany me for prenatal checkups. Won't anyone criticize you?" Mu Yanchen replied, "I'll be worried if someone else comes with you." Meng Qingxue's heart warmed when she heard this. The corners of her lips curled up as fireworks seemed to explode in her heart. When they arrived at the hospital, Mu Yanqing helped her out of the car and into the gynecology department. After accompanying her through various checkups, he helped her to a chair and said to her, "I'll line up to get the report. Wait for me here." "Okay." Mu Yanqing smiled and handed her the mineral water he had bought before turning to line up. Chapter 2975. Meng Qingxue sat quietly at the same spot and waited. She was bored, so she took out the half-finished cloth shoes from her bag. When she was pregnant, she had nothing to do at home, so she learned how to do handicrafts. From the child's knitted shirt to the cloth shoes, she thought that the clothes she knitted would look better on the child, so she wanted to do everything herself. Anyway, she had nothing to do. She was usually busy with these handicrafts, so she enjoyed it. Halfway through her knitting, she suddenly heard a woman gritting her teeth behind her. Meng Qingxue? Meng Qingxue turned her head when she heard someone calling her name, only to meet Song Enya's gaze by chance. As the saying goes, enemies meet on a narrow road. This was probably it. Meng Qingxue did not expect that Song Enya would come to the same hospital as her for a prenatal checkup on this day. However, unlike her, Song Enya was accompanied by Jiang Qiming. Jiang Qiming also went to line up to receive the report, leaving Song Enya sitting on the stool and waiting. Song Enya was furious when she saw her. She did not even need to think about who was accompanying this woman for a prenatal checkup. When she thought of how Mu Yanqing was accompanying and taking good care of her, what about herself? She could only let Jiang Qiming accompany her for a prenatal checkup. She was alone, and her heart was filled with hatred. She stood up at once and walked up to Meng Qingxue. Her vicious gaze landed on her slightly bulging belly, and she narrowed her eyes. It was said that this woman was also 5 months pregnant. Ever since Meng Qingxue returned to the capital, she had thought of ways to look for her. The hateful thing was that Mu Yanqing had protected her very well. No matter how much she asked, she could not find out where she had gone. She only knew that Mu Yanqing had been accompanying her and taking care of her. He was with her every night. Just this matter alone was enough to make her feel especially unbalanced in her heart. On what basis? She was his fiancée. Even if there were no feelings, she was pregnant with his flesh and blood. As a father, shouldn't he ask about her and show some concern? Song Enya felt bitter in her heart. When Meng Qingxue saw her, her heart skipped a beat and a contemptuous expression appeared on her face. "So it's you?" She smiled arrogantly and coldly. "Are you here for a prenatal checkup too?" "Meng Qingxue, how dare you say that?" Song Enya did not bother to hide her anger as she pointed a finger at her. "Are you feeling smug? You feel a sense of accomplishment for interfering in someone else's marriage, don't you?" Meng Qingxue was stunned. Song Enya's loud voice attracted the attention of the people around her. The people who came here were all pregnant women who came for a prenatal checkup. As soon as they heard this sentence, everyone's curiosity was suddenly gathered. Everyone looked in their direction, only to see two people, one standing and one sitting, angrily confronting each other. Meng Qingxue sneered. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what I'm talking about. Song Enya paused. Has Mu Yenqing been with you for the past 2 months? Meng Qingxue retorted. What does that have to do with you? I'm his wife. What do you think it has to do with me? Chapter 2976. When the crowd heard this, they immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that this indignant woman was the first wife, and this pitiful and innocent woman sitting in the seat was the mistress. How long has it been since I last saw my husband? When I was pregnant, as my husband, he didn't stay by my side to take care of me. Instead, he stayed by his mistress' side day and night, taking care of her and loving her. What am I to him? Meng Qingxue was startled. She looked around and saw that the people around her were looking at her, pointing at her, and gossiping about her. Tisk, TSK, TSK. Mistresses nowadays are really too arrogant. This first wife is really pitiful. She's pregnant, but he's not by her side to take care of her. Is the mistress pregnant too? Look at her. If she's not pregnant, why would she be here? She's probably here for a prenatal checkup, looking at her belly. She should be 5 months pregnant. The mistress and the first wife are both pregnant. How rare! How much of a scumbag is this man? He actually made his wife and mistress pregnant at the same time. It's too disgusting. She bit her lower lip hard and glared at the Missy furiously. This woman was really vicious. She actually wanted to use public opinion to criticize and suppress her. Song Enya continued, You guys don't know, right? My husband and I are getting married next month, but this woman is obviously trying to disgust me. I don't know what methods she used to keep my husband by her side. She must have whispered something into my husband's ear. It's been 2 months. My husband has never asked me a single question, nor has he ever come to see me or the child. I really don't know what to do. At the end of her sentence, her eyes turned red. She covered her face with her hands and let out a sad sob. When everyone heard this, they were filled with righteous indignation and started insulting her. This woman is really shameless. Why is a mistress so disgusting? I think she's quite pretty. She can have any man she wants. Why does she have to cling on to someone else? Maybe this man is rich. Isn't this the way of the world now? Any man with a little money is easy to become arrogant. He doesn't fall at home, but outside he's arrogant, just like the emperors of ancient times. A mistress is despicable, and a husband is even more despicable. It's better not to marry such a man. Song Enya wiped her tears and said, There's nothing we can do even if we regret it. We already have a child. We can't let the child be born without a father, right? Yeah, that's a problem. Some of the older people couldn't stand it. They pointed at Meng Qingxue and said, If you have a conscience, don't cling on to someone else's husband. As for the child in your belly, hurry up and abort it. What's hers is hers. Even if you snatch it away, can you still have a clear conscience? Exactly. She was a good girl. Why did she interfere in someone else's marriage? You will suffer retribution for doing this. Meng Qingxue suddenly raised her head and said in a deep voice, I'm not a mistress. Song Enya glared at her. What did you say? I said. Meng Qingxue suddenly stood up and stood face to face with her. I'm not a mistress. You are. When everyone heard this, they were shocked again. This situation could not help but become a little chaotic. Some people could not understand what was going on. Chapter 2977. Meng Qingxue sneered and looked straight at Song Enya as she said word by word, Song Enya, you're the third party who came between Yenqing and me. What did you say? Isn't that so? Meng Qingxue said coldly, I was the one who got together with Yenqing in the beginning. What about you? Yes, I admit that you're going to marry him, but don't think that I don't know what tricks you used. Song Enya's face turned pale as she said, Don't spout nonsense. Who are you calling a third party? You. Meng Qingshue's eyes were cold as she thought to herself, Are we competing in acting? Song Enya, you've been scheming against me all this while. You've been pressuring me step by step and using underhanded means to harm me. You've even threatened my unborn child. You're vicious and merciless, but I won't back down anymore. At the thought of this, Meng Qingxue smiled coldly and straightened her back, giving off a feeling that she would not tolerate any violation or blasphemy. She looked around and said, Even if you want to be the righteous ones, you have to get to the bottom of the matter before you blame others. Do you really believe what she said? Do you know how the child in her stomach came about? Before Song Enya could say anything, Meng Qingxue continued, Yes, I admit that Yenqing is your fiancé now, but Yenqing originally belonged to me. The person he loves is me, and the child in my stomach is different from the child in your stomach. The child in my stomach was given to me by Yenqing, but the child in your belly was stolen by you. What? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. How could the child in her stomach be stolen? What do you mean? How could the child be stolen? I don't understand. Song Enya immediately understood what she was going to say. She was so angry that her entire body trembled. Shut up. Why? Miss Song, are you feeling guilty now? Don't you want everyone to be the judge for you? Why don't you tell us how the child in your stomach came about, so that everyone can judge who is right and who is wrong? Shut up, Song Enya barked. Meng Qingxue smiled, but did not take her warning seriously. She turned around and said to everyone, You don't know, right? The woman standing before you is the mayor's daughter, Song Enya. Song Enya? I read in the newspapers that our mayor, Song Zhenghua, has a total of 3 children. The second daughter is called Song Enya. I heard that she came from a prestigious school and is highly educated. She also has outstanding looks. So it's the mayor's daughter. Meng Qingxue continued, The child in her belly is a test tube baby conceived through artificial insemination. As for where did this sperm come from? She stole it from the sperm bank. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd went into an uproar. Stolen? How is that possible? Meng Qingxue said coldly, It's indeed hard to believe. She comes from a prestigious family and is the mayor's woman. She's talented and beautiful. Why would she do such a despicable thing? Song Enya screamed hysterically at her, *TCH. I told you to shut up. Didn't you hear me? With that, she pounced on Meng Qingxue and reached out to grab her hair. Meng Qingxue took a step back and protected her stomach. She raised her hand and slapped her hand away. Chapter 2978. The scene instantly turned chaotic. Perhaps Song Enya had been greatly agitated by her words, so much so that her eyes were bloodshot as she scratched and hit her. Meng Qingxue was not to be trifled with either. Perhaps out of maternal instinct, she covered her stomach with one hand and grabbed Song Enya's hair with the other, pulling it fiercely. The two of them fought. The surrounding passers-by watched in fear, but most of them were just there to watch the show. Many of them were pregnant. Seeing such a scene, who would dare to come forward to mediate? Jiang Qiming returned with the report and saw that there was a fight in the seats. When she took a closer look, she saw that one of them was Song Enya. She was so frightened that she threw the report in her hand and rushed forward. Stop fighting! Stop fighting! Jiang Qiming finally separated the two of them. She pulled Song Enya aside and asked anxiously, "Is anything wrong?" "Mom, don't stop me. I want to teach this little b asterisk tch a lesson." As Song Enya spoke, she wanted to rush forward again. Afraid that she would hurt herself, Jiang Qimeng pulled her back and reprimanded her. "What are you doing? Think about it. You're already 5 months pregnant. It's not like before. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the child in your stomach. How can you be so willful?" Song Enya turned her head and stretched out her hand with a ferocious expression. With reddened eyes, she pointed at Meng Qingxue, who was standing 2 meters away with a guarded look on her face. She cried, "Mom, she's Meng Qingxue. She's that b asterisk tch. For the past 2 months, Mu Yanqing hasn't cared about me and has always been by her side. How can I not be angry? She even said that I'm a third party. Mom, how can I not be angry? All right, be careful. Don't affect the baby." She was busy calming her emotions when she suddenly reacted and glared at her in surprise. "What did you say? She's that Meng Qingxue?" Jiang Qimeng turned her head and stared fixedly at Meng Qingxue. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife as it pierced her. "Are you Meng Qingxue?" Meng Qingxue glanced at the woman. Based on their earlier conversation, she could roughly guess her identity. She was Song Enya's mother. She covered her lower abdomen with one hand and was on full alert. Where's Mu Yanchen?" Jiang Qimeng yelled. "Where is he? His fiancée is already 5 months pregnant, but he doesn't care about her at all. He only cares about you. You be asterisk tch." Meng Qingxue said angrily, "I'm not a bitch. Auntie, please show some respect when you speak. As the mayor's wife, you don't have any manners at all." Jiang Qimeng was stunned. She looked around and saw many people pointing in their direction. Only then did she realize that they were in public, and she indeed had to be careful. Thinking of this, she walked towards Meng Qingxue and said, "Come with me. I have something to talk to you about." Seeing her glaring at her, Meng Qingxue quickly shook her head. "I won't go with you. I want to stay here and wait for Yanchen. I told you to come with us. Did you hear me?" Jiang Qimeng's tone became sharper. "This is our private matter. There's no need to talk about it in public. No matter what, we have to wait until Yanchen comes back, right?" Meng Qingxue was very smart. Chapter 2979. Meng Qingxue knew very well that she was weak and alone. Without Mu Yanqing's protection, she was nothing. Seeing the stalemate, Jiang Qimeng became even angrier. However, she was determined to settle this matter tonight, no matter what. Usually, Mu Yanqing hid this little vixen so well that she could not find any clues. Now that they had bumped into each other on a narrow path, how could he let her go? At the thought of this, Jiang Qimeng strode up to Meng Qingxue and grabbed her arm, not allowing her to say anything. "Little b asterisk tch, I'm telling you, no matter what, you have to leave with me today. We have to settle the score between you and Enya." "I'm not leaving. Come with me." Amid the tussle between the two, Mu Yanqing returned with the report in his hand. He caught sight of a group of people surrounding them with Song Enya and Jiang Qimeng standing in the middle. When he saw Jiang Qimeng tugging at Meng Qingxue's arm with all her might, he immediately rushed up and threw Jiang Qimeng aside. He stood in front of Meng Qingxue to protect her and swept a cold glance at them. "What are you doing?" When Song Enya saw him, she was even angrier. When she saw him standing on Meng Qingxue's side without a second thought, she felt even more embarrassed and could not tell right from wrong. "Mu Yanqing, what do you mean by this? Please be clear about who your fiancée is. It's not her. It's me. The person you're marrying is also me." Song Enya yelled at him at the top of her lungs. "What do you mean by this? What does she mean by this?" When Jiang Qiming saw him, her attitude softened a little. She sighed and said, Yanqing, you and Enya are getting married next month. Now that you're circling around this woman, what position do you place Enya in? Back then, I wasn't the one who insisted on marrying your daughter. When Mu Yanqing recalled how the mother-daughter pair had been eyeing Meng Qingxue covetously earlier, he could not help but feel angry. He said coldly, I clearly don't have any feelings for your daughter. She's the one who wants to marry me. I told her back then that I can marry her, but she has no right to interfere in my private affairs. This is a treaty, and I made it very clear. You're having an affair. Song Enya accused. Logically speaking, this shouldn't exist. Mu Yanqing could not help reminding her, Song Enya, we're not married yet. But our wedding is next month. Song Enya fumed. Why? All I want is a loyal marriage and a loving husband. Can't I get it? Do you have the right to do that? He paused for a moment before adding, if you don't want this disloyal marriage, you can call it off at any time. I don't mind. Mind? Song Enya looked at him in disbelief. She could not believe that he would say such a thing. For a moment, countless fragmented scenes flashed through her mind. She had worked so hard to get what she wanted, but in the end, she did not get anything. She had racked her brains to get Mu Yaja. She did not hesitate to go through extreme pain and bear all the humiliation to get pregnant with Mu Yaja's child so that she could marry him. In the end, she realized that she was the one who was being played. Chapter 2980. In the end, what happened? Yun Shirshir, whom she hated the most, was now being doted on by Mu Yaja. She was as blissful as she could be. A while ago, a media reporter reported that Yun Shirshir had lost her eyesight due to that accident. Her eyes were injured, and she was now recuperating at home. It was also said that because of Gu Xing's incident, Yun Shirshir was depressed and had no appetite. She almost lost the child in her stomach. However, she saw the paparazzi secretly taking photos of Yun Shirshir wearing a mask and accompanied by Mu Yaja to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. She was all smiles the entire time. When Mu Yaja looked at her, even though the pixels of the photos were blurry, she could still feel his doting behavior, as if he was protecting a child. She hated it. Why did some people get happiness so easily? But what about her? Thinking about Yun Shirshir, Meng Qingxue, and herself, Song Enya's heart suddenly turned cold, and she felt so pitiful. She clenched her fists and suddenly walked toward Meng Qingxue. Grabbing her hand, she asked Mu Yanqing, Why do you like such a woman? What are you doing? Mu Yanqing tried to block her hand, but Song Enya pushed him away abruptly. Looking at Meng Qingxue with a ferocious expression, she said, arrogantly, I don't know where this little wild model came from. In terms of family background, and looks, how can such a lowlife compare to her? How am I inferior to her? Why are you protecting her like this? Don't you know? Your second uncle will never let her step into the Mu family's door. Mu Yanqing was taken aback by her words. Don't tell me you've forgotten why your second brother was chased out of the Mu family. Song Enya's eyes were red as she gritted her teeth and said, It's because he insisted on being with Yun Shirshir. But your second uncle is proud and arrogant. The Mu family's threshold is so high that it's not something that a slut of unknown origin can step into. If you insist on keeping this trash, have you not thought about the consequences? She paused for a moment before continuing. Your second brother loves beauty so much that he's willing to give up the Mu family's empire. But he was different. He was capable and had a business mind. Even if he left the Mu family, he would still be able to make a name for himself. Now that he had established the Xingyu Financial Group, he could still maintain his glory. What about you, Mu Yanqing? Don't forget what you relied on to become the head of the Mu Jia. Ask yourself, if you leave the Mu family, what are you? You're nothing. Mu Yanqing's face paled as he was agitated by her attack. But what she said was the truth. If he left the Mu family, he would have nothing. He's not like Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja had a genius business mind since he was young, even when he was still the CEO of the Mu Group, although he was controlled by Mu Linfeng on the surface. Who was Mu Linfeng? It was not an exaggeration to describe him as a sly old fox. He actually managed to empty more than half of the Mu Group behind Mu Linfeng's back, although it was said that he was chased out of the family. This was only the Mu family's side of the story. What was the truth? He left in a carefree manner and became the chairman and CEO of the Xingyu Financial Group in a grand manner. He was still a glorious legend. As for him, Mu Linfeng would not let Meng Qingxue step into the Mu family. Chapter 2981. Although he was the head of the family, the real power was still in the hands of Mu Linfeng. What Mu Linfeng wanted was only a puppet and a facade. His current extravagant lifestyle was being held down humbly by the Mu family. If he left the Mu family, he would really have nothing. Don't you want to think about it properly? Song Enya pointed at Meng Qingxue and questioned him. For such a woman, is it really worth it to follow Mu Yaja's example and give up the position of the Mu family head? Mu Yanqing glanced at Meng Qingxue. He could not be chased out of the Mu group. He wanted to give Meng Qingxue and the child in her womb the best life possible. However, all of this was given to him by the Mu group. Once he left the Mu group, he would have nothing. Meng Qingxue looked at him anxiously, as if she could see through his struggle. She smiled and said, "Yanqing, don't listen to her. Even if you leave the Mu group, you won't have nothing. Don't you still have me? And the child in my womb. How can you have nothing?" Song Enya rebuked angrily. "Shut up. You're the one who should shut up." Meng Qingxue yelled at her before turning to Mu Yanqing. "Yanqing, don't you understand me? I know that you want to give me the best life possible. However, everyone has a different definition of happiness. Some women want to live in a big villa and have a bodyguard around them 24/7. However, I only want you. You're enough. Even if you really have nothing, it's fine." After a pause, she choked and said, "On the contrary, I feel that if you really have nothing, I can protect and love you with more peace of mind. That's because I don't have to care about what others think, and I don't have to be suspected of having ulterior motives for loving you. I love you, but I only love you as a person. Nothing else is important." "Oh, that's so touching. Do you really think that Yanqing will give up the Mu group for you?" Song Enya pinched her chin and said aggressively, "Don't you know how long he's been coveting everything he's gotten today? Don't you know? How long had he yearned for this day? Now that he has obtained everything, do you really think he will be willing to give it up again? What a joke. You." After a pause, she added, "It's easy for you to say that, but don't you know that a poor couple has many sorrows?" What Mu Yanqing wanted had always been obvious, so he would naturally make the right choice. It's not your turn to fan the flames here. Song Enya. Meng Qingxue glared at her and suddenly sneered. "I heard that in order to get pregnant with Mu Yaja's child, you did not hesitate to undergo artificial insemination. However, you didn't expect that Mu Yaja would swap your semen for Yanqing's. By a freak combination of factors, you got pregnant with Yanqing's child. So, is this what you want as well?" Song Enya's face turned ugly. "Shut up." Her gaze suddenly landed on Meng Qingxue's stomach. A cruel glint flashed across her eyes as she curled the corners of her lips into a bloodthirsty smile. "Do you think that with the child in your stomach, you can become a mother because of the child? You're delusional. I'd like to see how you're going to strut around in front of me if you don't have this child." As she said that, she suddenly stretched out her hand and grabbed at her stomach. No. Chapter 2982. Meng Qingxue was so frightened that her face turned pale. She hurriedly retreated, but Song Enya pounced on her like a madwoman and wrestled with her again. She wanted to destroy this child. When that time came, let's see how a fallen woman like Meng Qingxue could stir up trouble. Mu Yanqing finally reacted. Without thinking, he rushed over and separated the two people who were wrestling. He stood in front of Meng Qingxue and pointed at Song Enya. He said sternly, "Song Enya, are you a shrew? I've already warned you time and time again that you shouldn't pester me endlessly without knowing what's right or wrong. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." "Shrew? Are you calling me a shrew?" Song Enya widened her eyes in shock. She could not believe that he would say that about her. Shrew. No one had ever described her like that since she was a child. "If you dare to touch a single strand of Qingshue's hair, I won't let you off." Mu Yanqing's next words thoroughly infuriated Song Enya. She nodded. Her eyes were sharp as she said in a trembling voice, "All right, Mu Yanqing, you're amazing. You're really amazing. I'd like to see what you can do to me if I get rid of this B** starred in this woman's stomach." With that, she rushed hysterically toward Meng Qingxue and pushed Mu Yanqing with all her might. Her eyes were bloodshot. Seeing that Meng Qingxue was about to be pushed to the ground, Mu Yanqing was concerned about the child in her stomach. Without thinking too much, he supported Meng Qingxue and pulled her into his arms. With his other hand, he pushed Song Enya protectively. Song Enya put all her strength into her hand, so when Mu Yanqing pushed her, she could not maintain her balance at all and her body leaned back. Mu Yanqing only heard Jiang Qiming's scream. The next second, he heard the sound of something falling heavily to the ground. Her bag fell to the ground, and the skincare products and phone inside scattered on the ground. Then, the sound of people gasping could be heard from all around. Meng Qingxue was also taken aback. Mu Yanqing hugged her and followed her line of sight, only to be horrified to see Song Enya lying on the ground. Her contorted features showed how much pain she was in. Jiang Qiming immediately ran over and helped her up. Concerned, she asked, "Are you all right?" Song Enya's face was ghastly pale as beads of cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Jiang Qiming flew into a rage out of humiliation. Pointing at Mu Yanqing, she yelled, "Mu Yanqing, are you crazy? Enya is also pregnant with your child. What do you mean by this?" "You, Mom." Beside her, Song Enya's feeble voice interrupted her helplessly. She clutched Jiang Qiming's sleeve tightly as she sobbed weakly, "Mom, it hurts." Someone screamed, "It's bleeding." Jiang Qiming looked at her legs in shock, only to see two streams of viscous liquid flowing down her inner thighs slowly. "Enya, why are you bleeding?" Song Enya's face turned even paler when she heard that she was bleeding. She only felt a sharp pain in her stomach, as if something in her body was falling hard. She followed Jiang Qiming's gaze and looked down. When she saw the drops of blood on the ground, she was so anxious that she was about to cry. Meng Qingxue was also shocked by this scene, and her face turned ugly. Chapter 2983. Song Enya was afraid and in despair. She was 5 months pregnant, so it was not like she did not have any feelings for the child in her stomach. Furthermore, this was her last bargaining chip and bet. If she lost it, she would not know what to do. "Mu Yanqing, why are you so heartless?" Jiang Qiming questioned. The people around them immediately said, "Hurry and send her to the emergency room." Yes, the nurse rushed over when she heard the news and pushed Song Enya to the emergency room. Meng Qingxue's breathing quickened. She grabbed Mu Yanqing's sleeve and asked worriedly, "Will something happen to Song Enya?" "I don't know." Mu Yanqing did not know how to reply to her. because even his mind was in a mess. Meng Qingxue asked cautiously, "What if the child in her stomach can't be saved? Will you be sad?" "No," Mu Yanqing sneered. "That child shouldn't exist. It's her own fault, and she deserves it. I didn't want to push her. It's her. I'm afraid that she'll hurt you." As he spoke, his breathing suddenly quickened. Mu Yanqing looked down at his hands. It was these hands that had pushed Song Enya away earlier. If the child really could not be saved, it must be because of him. "But I didn't push her on purpose." "He didn't do it on purpose. He didn't want to hurt her." Meng Qingshue's heart ached. She hugged him tightly and said sadly, "Yanqing, don't think about it. I know, I saw it. You didn't want to hurt her. You were trying to protect me. Don't blame yourself." Mu Yanqing hugged her and closed his eyes weakly. Outside the operating theater, Jiang Qiming had been sitting for a long time. When Mu Yanqing and Meng Qingxue walked over, she looked up and saw them. She stood up agitatedly and pounced on Meng Qingxue. "It's all your fault. It's all your fault, you little B***tch. The doctor said that the child might not be saved. If it weren't for you. As she spoke, she was about to slap Meng Qingxue. Mu Yanqing shielded Meng Qingxue with his body and pushed Jiang Qiming away. "Auntie, calm down. Please conduct yourself with dignity." Jiang Qiming's eyes were bloodshot. "Mu Yanqing, are you still going to protect her? If the child doesn't survive, it has nothing to do with her." Mu Yanqing said agitatedly, "I'm responsible for this. I'll take responsibility for my own actions. If you have any dissatisfaction, just come at me." Jiang Qiming nodded and said in a trembling voice, "Okay. You're a man. You're a responsible man. Why are you going as his mother? What if she has lost her child? What?" She questioned him as she punched his chest. Just then, the door suddenly opened. Jiang Qiming turned around anxiously and saw the doctor walking out. She immediately went up to him and asked worriedly, "Doctor, how is my daughter?" "Madam, please calm down a little. Please calm down. I'm really sorry that the child couldn't be saved. I'm sorry." Jiang Qiming's eyes widened when she heard this. She fell to the ground weakly and could not get up no matter how the nurse tried to help her. Soon, the operating table was pushed out. Song Enya had just finished a curettage. As she was 5 months pregnant, the anesthesia from last night's curettage had slowly worn off. She endured the pain as her face was covered in cold sweat. Chapter 2984. Jiang Qiming's heart ached as she rushed forward. She held onto the bed and looked at her. "How do you feel? Does it hurt a lot?" Where's the baby?" Song Enya asked in a trembling voice. "Is the baby still here?" As she spoke, she raised her heavy hand to touch her stomach, only to feel a flat area. Her tears fell uncontrollably. When Meng Qingxue heard this, her face froze for a moment. She felt the man's back stiffen and her heart plummet. In the ward, Song Enya had fallen asleep after being injected with a sedative. Mu Yanqing sat outside the door, while Meng Qingxue sat beside him, never leaving his side. He originally wanted to send her home first, but Meng Qingxue said that no matter what, she wanted to be with him and not go anywhere. Mu Yanqing could not do anything about it, so he let her be. When Mu Shumin received the news, he rushed to the hospital. When he reached the door of the ward, he saw Mu Yanqing and Meng Qingxue sitting together with him. He frowned slightly, walked over, and glanced at them coldly. Mu Yanqing did not notice her. His head was lowered, and he seemed to be thinking about something. He did not hear Mu Shumin's footsteps coming over. It was Meng Qingxue who reacted and nudged him gently. He looked up and was surprised to see Mu Shumin. "Why are you here?" "Don't ask me first." As Mu Shumin said this, he glanced at Meng Qingxue from the corner of his eye. seemingly hinting at something. Shouldn't you explain who this is? Auntie, I'll tell you about her later. As Mu Yenching said this, he stood up and said to Mu Shumin, Song Enya had a miscarriage. A miscarriage? Yes, the child is gone. When Mu Shumin heard this news, his expression changed. Looking at the guilty look on his face, he seemed to have guessed something and asked tentatively, Song Enya's child is gone. Is it related to you? Mu Yenching took a deep breath. I accidentally pushed her, and she fell to the ground. The child was lost. You. Mu Shumin was furious and questioned him. Why were you so careless when you knew that she was pregnant? I didn't do it on purpose. She seemed to have gone crazy and pounced on Qingxue. I saw that she was like a shrew, so without thinking, I wanted to push her away. In the end, I didn't control of my strength. In the end, it's all because of this woman, right? Yes. You. Meng Qingxue. Mu Yenching said unhappily, Don't spout nonsense. Mu Shumin interrupted him again and warned coldly, Don't forget how you became the head of the family. Mu Yenching fell silent and his face turned ashen. Don't tell me you want to imitate your second brother and have a second Yun Shirshir. Then learn from him and hand over the position of the family head to someone else. Chapter 2985. Auntie, if it's an unnecessary explanation, I don't want to hear it. Mu Shumin was obviously infuriated by him. When she received a call saying that something had happened to Song Enya, she immediately rushed to the hospital. On the way there, she found out that it was this troublesome nephew of hers who had caused Song Enya's miscarriage. She was even more baffled. Why did such a thing happen all of a sudden? Back then, Mu Yenching had promised her that in order to become the head of the Mu family, he had analyzed the pros and cons clearly. Mu Shumin had also made a pact with him. This concubine could be married into the family, but he had to mediate the relationship between the concubine and the main wife. But he, on the other hand, had caused such a foul atmosphere. Once she arrived at the hospital and saw Meng Qingxue, she roughly figured out what was going on from the beginning to the end. Mu Shumin was afraid that if Mu Yenching were to emulate Mu Yaja and choose a woman over the family, then all her efforts would go down the drain. Yenching, I'll say the ugly things first. Meng Qingxue can be a concubine, but if she breaks the rules of the Mu group, you know what I'm capable of. Don't blame me for not warning you earlier. Mu Shumin's words were harsher. Mu Yenching glanced at Meng Qingxue and then at Mu Shumin before slowly nodding his head. Only then was Mu Shumin satisfied and entered the ward. Meng Qingxue kept her head lowered and remained silent. Her mind kept replaying Mu Shumin's words. She had a feeling that this woman's methods were extremely ruthless. She could not help but worry. It was not easy for her to win Mu Yenching's heart. Would he waver again because of Mu Shumin's words? Mu Shumin walked into the ward, straightened her face, and walked to the bed with a worried look. Is that lass Enya all right? When Jiang Qimeng saw her, she finally had a place to vent her grievances. So she cried and complained to her. She recounted everything that had happened. Jiang Qimeng cried and complained, Our Enya is from a prestigious family. After all, is it wrong for Yenching to marry our Enya? But he's great. Enya hasn't married into the family yet, and he already can't wait to get a mistress. It's not that the Songs don't know the rules of the Mu group, but a concubine should at least wait until Enya is married, right? She hasn't married into the family yet, aunts, and she's already here. What will happen after she's married? Then wouldn't little 4 and little 5 have to stand in a row? Mu Shumin, you're right. Is there any reason? On the surface, Mu Shumin remained calm and expressed her understanding, but in her heart, she thought to herself, this Mu Yenqing marrying Enya might not be aggrieved, but he won't get anything out of it either. In her eyes, Song Enya was a withered flower that Mu Yaja did not want. Seeing that Mu Yaja could not get her, she turned around and wanted to get close to Yenqing. She even felt wronged for Yenqing. How could Jiang Qiming come here to complain? However, this thought remained in her heart. Mu Shumin smiled gently and said, Qiming, what are you talking about? Speaking of which, I know that Enya has been wronged this time. If the child is gone, then so be it. Even if it's gone, there'll be plenty of time in the future after she marries into the family. She'll still have children,